How's it going, everybody? Too Spooky here, and welcome back to Manga vs. Movie, a new series where we go over and analyze the various films that are based on manga, in terms of how accurate they are to the source material, the various differences between the two, and if the film itself can truly be considered a good adaptation, with an overall goal of finding out which manga adaptations are worth watching, which ones you should avoid at all costs, and which ones are considered the very best. In our first installment of the series, we took a look at what I believe is one of the best manga adaptations. So naturally, for our second installment, we're going to be taking a look at debatably the worst manga adaptation of all time, Dragon Ball Evolution.
What? No.
While Dragon Ball Evolution by itself would be plenty for us to pick apart this entire episode, I've actually got something a little special in store for this one. Something that the majority of you probably didn't even know would be that Dragon Ball Evolution is not the only live-action adaptation of Dragon Ball. In fact, there's actually two others, both of which are unofficial live-actions that were created in foreign countries. The first being Dragon Ball, Sawara Son Goku, Agiora Son Goku, and the second is called Dragon Ball The Magic Begins. So we've got not one, but three adaptations of Dragon Ball to dig into today. And let me just say, this episode is going to be a doozy.
Cool.
So strap in, beware of spoilers, and let's take an in-depth look at the Dragon Ball live-action adaptations in a battle of manga versus movie. Although this may be common knowledge to many of you, the Dragon Ball manga was created by Akira Toriyama in 1984, originally intended to be a shorter tale that was based on Journey to the West. However, after the manga saw great success pretty early on, the manga continued all the way until 1995. Toriyama wanted to end the series much earlier than that, and it's rumored he wanted to end the series at various other points as it continued, but at the end of the day, he kept going for various reasons, until he finally just couldn't take it anymore. Because the series was essentially extended multiple times, it went through various tone changes as it progressed, beginning as a lighthearted adventure story centering around the main characters of Son Goku and Bulma on a quest to find the wish-granting Dragon Balls, and eventually turning into a series all about transformations and big bad guys constantly trying to conquer or destroy the planet. That being said, Dragon Ball has since become one of the most influential series out there, and the second best-selling manga series in existence, having sold over 300 million copies worldwide, spawning a whole entire franchise of anime, movies, video games, you name it, which also naturally led to a few live-action adaptations. The manga and anime have since been revived with Dragon Ball Super, but we'll talk about that a little later. Needless to say, with such a popular and beloved series like Dragon Ball, adapting it correctly for live action is certainly not an easy task. Or is it? Let's take a look at the three live action adaptations and how faithful they were to the source material. The first Dragon Ball adaptation was an unofficial Korean adaptation called Dragon Ball Sawara Son Goku Agiora Son Goku, which came out on December 12th of 1990. This movie was directed by Ryan Wong, and taking a look at his IMDb page, this was the only film he's ever directed. This adaptation in particular is based on the earliest arcs of the Dragon Ball manga, most notably adapting the entirety of the Emperor Pilaf saga. Because it's an unofficial adaptation, it's actually borderline impossible to get a legitimate legal copy of this movie. The only known method is to find someone selling one of the original Korean VHS tapes on eBay or something. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to find one in time for this video, but the entire movie is actually available to watch on YouTube right now, which I will link below if you want to give it a watch yourself. However, there are no subtitles available for this movie anywhere. I searched long and hard to find some, but they apparently don't exist for this particular film. So when I'm comparing it to the manga, it's going to be based purely on what I see visually, as I don't speak Korean, and therefore have no idea what the hell they are talking about. That said, if any of you out there do speak Korean and you want to do the whole entire world a favor, please give this movie subtitles. You would be a hero. Other than that, there isn't too much else I could find regarding background information for this one, so let's jump right into how this adaptation compares to the manga. The movie begins by introducing us to Goku in his home environment deep in the mountains somewhere, and I gotta give them some respect already because they actually gave him his tail. Goku then does some of the sickest flips I've ever seen in my entire life, before jumping onto a conveniently placed chunk of wood. He then rolls on it a little bit before flipping back off, and then uses his sick karate skills to turn that wood into some firewood. Goku then makes a gesture as if he's hungry, and then goes to talk to his Dragon Ball and pieces out. He then goes to the top of a very tall mountain, and jumps off in a way that radiates big energy. He then goes up to the water and screams bloody murder, which causes a poor fish to leap into his arms. After getting his fish, Goku f***ing backflips to the top of the mountain. We then get introduced to Bulma, who is out looking for the Dragon Balls. Goku notices her sick ride and decides to check it out. Bulma, feeling threatened by a 12-year-old with a fish, then decides to murder him in cold blood.
お前はもう死んでいる。何?
However, because Goku is Goku, it has no effect on him. Because she tried to kill him, Goku decides to get a little fresh with her for compensation. The two of them then talk for a while before going back to Goku's place to check out the Dragon Ball. Upon seeing it, Bulma explains what the Dragon Balls are, and how they can grant a wish via Shenron, and she eventually convinces Goku to come help her search for them. The two of them then begin their adventure, with Bulma showing off her capsule devices which spawn a motorcycle. The two of them drive across the lands before Bulma stops to use the bathroom in the woods, where she encounters a mechanized Birdman, who is apparently really pissed off for some reason. The Birdman then steals Bulma, and Goku beats the crap out of him with his power pole. In a lot of ways, this fight comes off like a turn-based RPG, but at the end of the day, Goku takes him down with a triple flip attack, saving the day. As far as how this compares to the manga, believe it or not, it's actually almost 100% spot on. Everything we just covered in the film takes place in chapter 1 of the manga, to the point where everything is almost reenacted shot for shot. Goku makes the firewood, he talks to the Dragon Ball, he jumps off the mountain, he goes fishing but instead with his tail, he meets Bulma and she almost murders him, he takes Bulma back to his place to see the Dragon Ball. Everything is basically the same, including Bulma's bubbly attitude. She even offers her ass to him for the Dragon Ball like she does in the manga. And when I was first reading the manga, I was actually kind of surprised at how sexual it was sometimes, but I'm glad this movie is keeping that stuff in because it really gives it that early Dragon Ball charm. The only real difference during this portion from film to manga comes from when the two set out on their quest to get the remaining Dragon Balls. In the manga, Bulma is captured by a pterodactyl, but the film instead opted to change that pterodactyl into a mechanized bird person, for some reason. So already this is looking to be a really good adaptation in terms of actually following the story. But let's see if that continues. We then directly cut to Emperor Pilaf and his goons. We've got Pilaf, of course, Mai, what is supposed to be Shu, I think, and wait, what the hell? Is that Nappa? With hair? Yeah, so apparently for some reason they decided to include Nappa in this movie, even though he doesn't appear until the Dragon Ball Z portion of the manga. And from what I could find out, this is indeed supposed to be Nappa, but he apparently shares the role of Raditz as well. So although the adaptation was pretty spot on for a minute there, we took a big 180 in the very next scene. This rendition of Pilaf also doesn't appear like the little blue guy, and instead he just appears like a smaller rat-looking man with huge ears. And Shu, I don't even want to talk about that one. But in this sequence, Pilaf basically gets really excited about his Dragon Ball. And then we cut back to Goku and Bulma. This is also a little bit different in terms of when people are introduced, as Emperor Pilaf wouldn't be introduced until chapter 18. Since it's gotten dark and they need a place to stay, Bulma launches some fireworks which magically transform into a house. They literally have the first episode of the Dragon Ball anime on that TV. That's meta as heck. Bulma then realizes that Goku smells whack, so she bodies him, proving her superior power scaling, and then takes him to get cleaned up. I had to add some extra censorship to this part, because they originally tried to censor Goku's Dragon Balls with only a small circle, and frankly, that was barely enough to save this scene from being straight up illegal. We also learn that Goku is a fan of them titties, and because of that, Goku proceeds to be an absolute creep by staring at Bulma while she takes a bath. After that, Goku brings back various exotic animals for dinner, but Bulma gets a little freaked out and decides to pelt him with fruit instead. And for some reason, Bulma decides to deep throat an orange. We then cut to the next morning where we see Turtle waltzing up to Bulma's capsule house, and boy, is he tired. Meanwhile, Goku is waking up from his slumber, and then he tries to wake Bulma up as well. But because she won't wake up, he decides to instead take a rest on her crotch. Realizing there is no bulge to be found, he gives it a little smack. Bulma, having just been sexually assaulted, awakes from her slumber, but instantly forgets about it to check on the Dragon Ball. The events we just covered are also exactly the same as Chapter 2 of the manga, to the point where it would be redundant to go over everything again because we literally just saw it all in the movie. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I gotta give them credit for adapting everything so close to the manga. It really gives this movie the early Dragon Ball charm. Going back to the movie, Goku decides to go outside and do like 15 flips for no reason whatsoever. He then decides to throw a big rock into the air and punch it, which causes it to explode and almost destroy Bulma's house. He then comes across Turtle, mistaking him for a rock. The poor little guy needed some salt water, so Bulma goes to grab him some. Turtle then asks Goku to transport him back to the ocean, so he does. Bulma reluctantly follows. We then cut to them taking a small break in the road, where we encounter a muscular man who looks like a Power Rangers extra. It appears as though he wants to take the turtle for his own reasons.
The f*** you say to me, you little shit?
Goku then whips out Gon's Jajanken in all three forms and knocks the poor guy back into the grass like 3 separate times, which apparently defeats him. We then fast travel to the ocean, our turtle bro then goes into the ocean, and Bulma fantasizes about swimming. Next thing we know, Master Roshi appears riding on Turtle Bro's back. Similar to the past 2 sequences, all of these events are almost exactly the same in the manga, this time adapting Chapter 3. The only real difference to all of this would be the fact that the enemy they encounter on the road is a wolf bear looking guy, and Goku takes him out with a single Jajanken attack. Otherwise, everything else is spot on. So far, so good. So the most notable difference already is that Master Roshi is kind of a dick in this adaptation. But for helping out Turtle, Master Roshi decides to give Goku a reward, which happens to be none other than the Flying Nimbus. Roshi demonstrates that he's not worthy of riding it anymore, and Goku cruises around on it like he's in Fast and the Furious 9. All the while, a bunch of cocaine blows into his face. Roshi then offers to give Bulma his Dragon Ball, which apparently will cost her a kiss, that he forcefully takes. Wait a second, how old is Master Roshi again? 300 years, huh? Well, I mean, I guess he did drink the Fountain of Youth. And, how old was Bulma supposed to be? FBI, open up! After Roshi gives his assault victim her Dragon Ball, Goku and Bulma then fast travel to a seemingly deserted village. All of those events were once again just like the manga, adapting everything from Chapter 4. The only differences this time around are Master Roshi of course being a douchebag, and the fact that instead of a kiss to get the Dragon Ball, Roshi requests that Bulma show him her panties. Otherwise, things are exactly the same. Roshi gives her the Dragon Ball after that, and Goku and Bulma also enter this deserted village. Goku and Bulma, curious about where everyone is, decide to break into some old guy's house.
Here's Johnny.
So this guy's first reaction is to try and murder the 12-year-old. Now, since I can't understand what they're saying, I'm just going to describe everything that happens from a purely visual standpoint. The old man and his daughter appear to serve Bulma and Goku dinner as an apology, where they go over a lot of dialogue. Bulma's Dragon Ball tracker goes off, and it appears the daughter has one. And it appears as though Bulma makes some sort of deal to acquire it. Next thing I know, we cut back to the town, and some creepy old guy with flowers just shows up out of nowhere, and Bulma pushes Goku out in the open, dressed like a little girl. Apparently this sight pleases the old man as he approaches slowly.
Hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
The man then goes in for a molestation attack, but is stopped by a street pole, which apparently is really funny to him. Next thing I know, Goku starts urinating on the street pole, and apparently this sight really makes the old guy angry. Goku then plays it off, and the two of them then begin to fight, and Goku yeets his clothes off. The old guy then Chris Angels the heck out of there, and a frickin' Megazord comes down.
What the fuck?
The two of them then have an epic battle involving lots of fireworks, and Goku's power pole suddenly has the ability to fire energy blasts, which take down the enemy, where it's revealed that it was actually Oolong! Almost forgot about that little guy. Now the whole entire sequence actually makes sense, but otherwise, that was really confusing. Bulma and Goku are rewarded with their Dragon Ball, and then we cut to the next scene. That whole sequence was adapted from chapters 5 and 6 of the manga, and once again, it's still pretty accurate. However, there are a few subtle differences. For one, the whole town shows up when Goku and Bulma learn about Oolong, and the daughter isn't the one who has the Dragon Ball. Instead, it's just some random old lady. Bulma makes a deal to get rid of Oolong in exchange for that Dragon Ball. So, similar to the movie, once Oolong arrives, they dress up Goku as a girl and try to deliver him to Oolong as his new wife. Oolong transforms into a much more attractive and young man, which also gets Bulma's attention, and considering Oolong is all about the bouncy, he plans on taking both of them. However, Goku's bladder gets the best of him, so he urinates on a nearby tree, which really makes Oolong angry, so he transforms into a giant bull. Oolong then realizes his transformation timer is about to run out, so he tricks Goku by running away, before letting another minute pass, and then he transforms into a giant robot, similar to the movie. In the manga, Oolong realizes Goku is actually super strong, so he tries to escape by transforming into things like a bat and a rocket. But at the end of the day, he is captured by Goku and apologizes to the village. Goku and Bulma get the Dragon Ball, and then Oolong is forced to tag along for their adventure. This whole sequence would be a good example of adapting the source material in a way that gets the point across, but at the same time it leaves out certain details that don't really matter for the adaptation. Either way, things are still looking pretty accurate so far. Going back to the movie, we get a glimpse of our three friends on a jet ski going across a river or something, which is similar to the manga, but then Mai jumps out of nowhere and transforms into a giant frickin' centipede that chases down our lads in the water. You know, for these up close and personal shots, you can kinda tell that this jet ski isn't even moving. Mai, the freaking centipede, eventually catches up to them, which apparently Oolong notices, or maybe he doesn't, I can't really tell, because he transforms into a fish and just nopes the heck out of there by jumping into the water. Except, as he does, he starts getting attacked by Mai in the water, so that worked out pretty well, huh? On an unrelated note, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the fact that Oolong is just a normal-sized dude in a pig costume that actually resembles Oolong. I don't know why, it just really makes me happy because it looks so goddamn ridiculous, yet accurate at the same time. That said, rip this poor actor having to try and swim with that darn mask on. Goku then decides to jump in the water to save him, and decides to fight that centipede in reverse. We then have the most epic fight in the entire movie. Oscar-worthy performance right there, kid. Mai the centipede then just kinda fricks off, and we immediately cut back to our boys back on land. For the record, Mai cannot transform, and this whole fight sequence did not occur in the manga. Oolong then decides he doesn't really want to come with, so Bulma offers him a piece of candy, and I guess he just decides, okay, candy, I'll come with, don't even worry about it. So they keep traveling until Oolong eventually decides, you know what, frick the candy, I'm gonna go ahead and sneak out of here and leave these nerds behind. And as they notice Oolong is gone, Bulma and Goku scream, which for some reason causes Oolong to have violent diarrhea on the spot. This exact sequence happens in chapter 7 of the manga, and the reason this happens is because the candy that Oolong ate was actually an invention of Bulma's that causes diarrhea whenever she says pee-pee. So because Oolong doesn't want to crap his pants again, he decides to continue tagging along. Goku and Bulma then decide to bully the poor pig and make him crap again before they continue on their journey. We then get a shot of a stuffed animal on top of a mountain, apparently having the ability to levitate a telescope. The stuffed animal sees our three adventurers walking across the barren wasteland and decides to go tell its master. The stuffed animal is also apparently on crack and is addicted to tobacco. If it's not obvious already, this is Puar, and for the record, Puar does not smoke in the manga. This is also where we get introduced to Yamcha,
the legend himself.
Yamcha then yeets off the mountain and gets into his super cool car, disobeying the rules of the road while he does. Another thing to note would be that in the manga, Bulma lost her capsules in the river when they were going across, so she no longer has any vehicles, meaning they have to walk, and she also no longer has any campsites. And I assume the same thing ended up happening in the film. However, since I can't understand the dialogue and I don't remember seeing anything fall into the water, I can't really tell if that's actually the case. Either way, eventually Bulma gets super tired of walking, while Goku just flies around on his Nimbus making the other two walk. Then Yamcha speeds in and confronts the lads. Don't try this at home, by the way.
How it feels to chew 5 gum. Stimulate your senses.
Goku takes notice of Yamcha and decides to confront him. Wait, was that the cameraman's sweat? Yamcha and Goku then talk a little bit before they both jump into a completely different environment with a single leap. The two of them then have a very drawn-out standoff before engaging in an epic battle, which begins with Yamcha somehow having an energy beam that he can shoot out of his sword that causes massive explosions. Watching them cut to very obvious stunt doubles for almost every jump is one of the many things I love about this film. In this shot right here, it looks like Goku was supposed to shoot an energy beam or something, but they forgot to add the effect in post, so it just kinda looks like Goku points his pole at Yamcha, and then all of a sudden this piece of rock just randomly explodes. Yamcha, taken aback by how powerful that non-existent attack was, decides to fight Goku with his Tiger Claw! Goku laughs in his face and gives him the old tripperoo, but Yamcha comes back with the triple fake-out dropkick, which is so epic they show the end result like 4 times. Goku then smacks Yamcha around some more before Yamcha has had enough and goes back for his sword.
Nope.
Before the two of them jump back onto the flat part of land they originally started, where they encounter Bulma resting. Bulma gets up as Yamcha runs by, and Yamcha instantly gets nervous and has an imaginary sequence where Bulma smacks him while in a wedding dress. He then frantically flips back into his car and yeets out of there like Doc Brown. Once again, this whole sequence is pretty similar to what happens in chapters 7 and 8 of the manga, with very minor differences, such as the fact that the fight is a lot more epic in the film, or that imaginary wedding sequence not occurring. But once again, we've got a pretty accurate adaptation of the manga. Consider me thoroughly impressed at the accuracy thus far. Goku and Oolong then have a discussion about the Dragon Balls in Oolong's capsule. At least we can assume that's what's happening because it happens in the manga. All the while, Yamcha is outside listening in and learns about the wish granting as well. Puar as a stuffed animal is great, by the way. Yamcha then peeps on Bulma taking a shower, which also happens in the manga. You can also clearly see someone's hand push Puar into the frame. God, I love this movie. We then skip chapter 10 of the manga completely within the film, which contained a sequence where Yamcha nukes their vehicle, and we also don't get Bunny Suit Bulma, and instead we skip right to the events of chapter 11. In the movie, Yamcha is spying on the group once again, before encountering Chi-Chi being chased by another Power Rangers reject. The Power Ranger guy tries to chop her in half with a sword, creating fireworks with every strike. However, Chi-Chi gets really scared and just kinda kicks him away, before launching her helmet spike at him, which also apparently explodes upon contact, and then it returns to her head. Chi-Chi then uses the Frick You beam, which causes our Power Rangers reject to die in epic fashion. Yamcha is rightfully concerned. In the manga, Chi-Chi is instead being chased by a dinosaur, which gets its head chopped off by her helmet blade, before she uses the Frick You beam and blows up the dinosaur's corpse. Yamcha then knocks her out and continues on. However, Yamcha never knocks her out within the film. Goku, Bulma, and Oolong then arrive at a flaming castle, where the next Dragon Ball apparently lies. At the same time, Yamcha is still spying on them with his super stylish telescope that he made in kindergarten. Goku goes up on his flying Nimbus to try and get a look, all the while Bulma and Oolong are attacked by the Ox King. They try to avoid him, but he isn't having it. Goku then takes notice and comes down to fight. The Ox King throws his axe, which explodes, so Goku gets back on his flying Nimbus and just kinda goes back up in the air. The Ox King then uses the Force to propel Bulma into the air and then bury her deep into the sand, while Oolong pulls out his Bruce Lee nunchucks and gets buried alive by the Ox King's cape flap. No exaggeration. The Ox King and Goku start having a conversation, which if we go over to the manga, we can see that they're likely talking about how the Ox King and Goku both know Master Roshi and Grandpa Gohan. At the same time, I should mention that everything we just saw in the film is accurate to chapters 11 and 12, except the part with Bulma and Oolong attacking the Ox King. The Ox King then asks Goku if he can go fetch Master Roshi, because Master Roshi has a certain item that the Ox King needs to wipe out the flames of the castle. In return, the Ox King will give him the Dragon Ball that resides in the castle. He also asks Goku to go fetch his daughter Chi-Chi on the way. Side note, it kinda looks like Goku is riding a giant Twinkie. In both the film and the manga, Goku finds Chi-Chi and asks her to come with him. The only difference being that in the manga, Yamcha goes to reconfront Chi-Chi after knocking her out, but he runs away as soon as he sees Goku coming. In both versions, as Chi-Chi is getting on the Nimbus, she grabs Goku's tail, which is where we learn that grabbing his tail is his one true weakness, which Yamcha takes note of as he is spying on them. In both versions, Goku and Chi-Chi go to the Kame house and convince Roshi to give them the item to put out the fire. The only thing is, Roshi apparently threw out the item they need to put out the fire, so he instead says that he'll come put out the fire himself. The only condition for him to come with is that he gets to touch Bulma's boobs. I assume this is the case for both versions because I don't know what is happening other than this turtle abuse.
I don't know what this is, but it's kind of hot.
The other difference would be that Master Roshi rides a completely different turtle in the manga, but instead he rides on our normal turtle bro in the film. Or at least I think he does. I honestly cannot tell what the hell is happening here. Goku, Chi-Chi, and Master Roshi all arrive, and in the movie, Roshi abuses Turtle Bro some more. Overall, Master Roshi is still a huge dick in this film. His perverted nature is definitely there, but it certainly takes a backseat to his douchebag behavior. In the manga, Roshi agrees to put out the fire if he gets to touch Bulma's breast afterwards, while in the movie it appears as though he just kind of forces himself upon her and then decides to do it anyways. I don't know. In both versions, Roshi pulls out his super ripped body out of nowhere and releases the very first Kamehameha of the series. I personally love how this film just has some random buff dude flex for the camera, and they even put a little tiny gray beard over the guy's obvious black beard already to add consistency. In both versions, the blast is so powerful that it not only puts out the fire, but also destroys the entire castle. After this, in both versions, Goku asks Roshi how long it would take him to master that attack, which Roshi says would take 50 years. Goku then gives it a try, and he's able to pull it off on the very first attempt. In the film, he destroys a log, but in the manga, he destroys a car. So far, everything in this adaptation has been pretty spot on. However, after this, we get to the point where the film and the manga play out a lot differently. For one, we skip over a lot of content in the manga, such as the Rabbit Gang, Yamcha officially joining the group, and also the first introduction of Emperor Pilaf and his goons. And instead in the film, we cut directly to Emperor Pilaf once again. By the looks of it, Mai is also back to her normal form, instead of, you know, a centipede. Pilaf then goes to wake up Nappa. I guess you could say he was a...
Nappa.
and send him out to stop Goku and his friends. In the manga, Mai and Shu steal the Dragon Balls from them, and Goku and his friends track them back to Pilaf's castle, where they end up getting caught in a trap. The only issue for Pilaf is that one of the Dragon Balls is still missing, which happens to be the one Goku is carrying himself. So they knock them out with sleeping gas and retrieve the final Dragon Ball from Goku. Pilaf and his goons then go out and summon Shenron. And in an effort to stop Pilaf, Goku blasts a small hole in the wall, which gives Oolong and Puar the opportunity to shapeshift into bats and go outside to stop them. Cutting back to the film, Yamcha spies on Goku, Bulma, and Oolong entering the cave, and decides to follow them inside. Once they all get inside the cave, Nappa shows up looking for a fight. So Nappa and Goku start duking it out almost immediately, and in the process, Goku straight up murders a different guy. We then get a minecart scene straight out of Temple of Doom, and I'm no expert here, but I'm pretty sure that these guys are just launching fireworks at each other, and there is no way that can be safe. Out of nowhere, Oolong just pulls out a bomb and just attempts to nuke these poor guys. Shortly after this, the three of them run into Yamcha, and he appears to join their group. They then run into Nappa and his goons once again. But wait a second. If we look back at when Nappa first appeared in the cave, he had this dinky little sword. Now, all of a sudden, he just has this huge-ass scimitar. I don't know where he was hiding that, but okay, whatever. Bulma tries to stop him with facts and logic, but he isn't having it. Goku and his stuntman then immediately start decimating Nappa and his goons, and once again, there's no way someone didn't lose a frickin' hand or two with all these fireworks. Like seriously, these guys are dedicated. Goku then gives Nappa the Kamehameha and frickin' murders him on sight. Then, in celebration of their victory, Yamcha cuts a guy so hard with his sword that he literally explodes a few seconds later. I don't really know how to explain what happens next, but the four of them just kind of fade through the fabric of reality into the next scene somehow.
Sorry, I just think I'm too stupid to understand this.
And as they materialize back into the outside world, another Megazord just shows up out of nowhere. So Oolong pulls out his Bruce Lee nunchucks and gets to work. He does his best, but unfortunately is quickly tossed aside. Goku then jumps in to save the day once again. Like seriously, how did they talk this poor guy into getting hit with fireworks over and over? I hope that guy got a fat paycheck. After that, Goku's power pole suddenly becomes a sparkler. After Goku fails to defeat the Megazord, Bulma looks like she's gonna bring the Tiger Claw out herself, but Yamcha stops her before giving a whistle. And this whistling somehow signals his car to literally fly toward them out of nowhere. Yamcha and his flying car then have a battle against the Megazord, where apparently Yamcha can suddenly shoot lightning bolts out of his sword again, but luckily for the Megazord, Yamcha's aim apparently sucks. Watching this almost made me forget this is supposed to be a Dragon Ball movie. Eventually, Yamcha manages to get a few good firework hits in, and that apparently does it, because the Megazord just kinda waddles in the background and explodes. By the way, where the hell is Puar at? I missed that little stuffed animal. F in the chat for Puar. Our group then rides off into the distance, and then we cut to them inside a cave, where they apparently run into some sort of laser trap. Based on what happened in the manga earlier, I'm assuming Mai is informing him of the fact that they captured the others in the cave. A bunch of gas enters the cave, which I'm assuming is the same sleeping gas from the manga. Pilaf and his goons then enter and go steal the Dragon Balls from them. Whoa! A little close there, pal. We then cut to a shot of the castle, and then we cut back to Goku making a hole, which I'm guessing is supposed to signify what they use to look through and see what's happening on the outside. Unlike the manga, Pilaf is summoning Shenron during the day, but similar to the manga, they convince Oolong to go outside and stop Pilaf. However, we don't see him transform into a bat, he just kind of appears outside. Pilaf then summons Shenron, and now that both the film and the manga are at the same spot, they both share a similar sequence where Pilaf is about to make a wish, but Oolong interrupts him and wishes for panties. In the manga, Oolong gets a single pair, but in the film, he is showered with them. Absolute mad lad. After this, the film and the manga conclude this story arc in two very different ways. In the manga, they all get trapped within one of Pilaf's traps again, and he plans to give them the death penalty for ruining his wish, by frying them in a glass room once the sun comes out the next morning, because apparently it'll get really hot, and you know the rest. This is where we learn that Goku can transform into a great ape, or Ozaru, whenever he looks at the full moon. This Ozaru power then allows him to break out of the room that they were all trapped in, and he starts wreaking havoc on the castle, which causes Pilaf and his goons to panic and try to escape. But Ozaru Goku throws a piece of the castle at them and crashes their plane. Yamcha then comes up with a plan to stop Goku by cutting off his weak point, his tail, which causes Goku to go back to normal. After this, since the Dragon Balls have been scattered across the world again, and they won't go back to being Dragon Balls for a year, the group decides to go their separate ways and meet again in 1 year, thus ending the Emperor Pilaf saga. While in the film, after Pilaf's wish was ruined, everyone suddenly ends up in a rocky area out of nowhere, as in they just kind of fade into the scene again. Since Pilaf is so pissed off at Oolong for stealing his wish, he suddenly becomes Emperor Palpatine and starts electrocuting our poor piggy boy. All of a sudden, a flaming explosion appears in a nearby rock formation, where Goku and the gang suddenly crawl out of. Goku, Yamcha, and Bulma then make fun of Pilaf's apparent mental illness, and his goons just suddenly appear next to him. Goku decides to fight Mai again, and basically frickin' murders her right off the bat. Oolong goes Bruce Lee mode for the 3rd time in this movie. Wait, was that a blow-up doll? Oh my god! Oolong then attempts to anally penetrate Beetleborg's Shu, but Shu isn't having it. The two of them then engage in an epic battle. But unfortunately, Shu is just too strong for Oolong to handle. Yamcha then decides to jump in and save the day, so he jumps up to these random flags that just happen to be nearby. He throws one of them at Shu, and somehow Yamcha threw that flag so hard that it literally makes Shu explode. Huh? Pilaf's reaction is exactly how I feel after witnessing that. Pilaf then uses his firebending practical effects to scare our heroes. And you could say they are quite frightened. Goku and Pilaf then take turns playing leapfrog as they both keep jumping off the same exact rock formations for some reason, before engaging in Mortal Kombat. Oolong then goes for the drop kick, but it fails. Pilaf then takes this opportunity to use the Get Wrecked jutsu. At first, it seems like Oolong is okay, but he then collapses. Goku and Pilaf then keep fighting, but apparently Pilaf is just too strong for Goku to beat, showing us that Pilaf is indeed at the top of the power scaling chart. Luckily for Goku, he finally gets in a couple lucky combos and temporarily brings Pilaf down. But before we can celebrate, Pilaf brings out the Frick You beam and Goku is brought down. If that wasn't enough, Oolong also brings down his pants.
Fuck you, you just got pranked.
Then, out of nowhere, Turtle Bro comes in to save the day, and no joke, beats the ever-living shit out of Pilaf like he's just a little bitch.
You picked the wrong house, fool!
Then, I shit you not, Goku and f***ing Oolong of all characters pull out a goddamn Kamehameha and blow Pilaf to smithereens. 3 separate times. And then they all celebrate, and the movie is over. I'm at a loss for words. What a cinematic masterpiece. So now that we've compared it to the manga, we've got to give this film an official rating out of 10. If you want to know more about how exactly I'm determining these ratings, you can find the qualifications in the description. In regards to adapting the characters, I'm going to give this film a 2 out of 3. Obviously, the language barrier prevents me from accurately knowing how well a lot of these characters were portrayed, but as far as I could tell, most of them were portrayed pretty faithfully. Although the kid actor's dialogue, or at least his delivery, seemed a little bit off. Goku actually felt and looked like early Goku. He gave off that very oblivious and curious vibe that Goku had in the early parts of the manga, and his look was spot on. I honestly have to give them credit for the hair too. I mean, yeah, it looked like it was just a big mass of hair gel, and that's probably where the entire budget for the film went. But its shape was basically as close as you could get to the actual Goku without looking too weird. And I really give them credit for making that work, and they also had Goku's tail, which is another plus from me. Bulma was probably the most accurate to the source material in my opinion, as she really gave off the bubbly yet serious attitude of Bulma within the manga. Her dialogue also felt very natural and convincing. Her various outfit changes were also very reminiscent of how often Bulma changes styles within the series. Obviously her hair wasn't blue or purple, but personally not adapting anime hair colors isn't really an issue for me. In general though, I felt the actress did a very good job. Yamcha was pretty decent and certainly looked the part. Puar and Oolong were pretty spot on and oddly charming to me personally. And the Ox King, Chi-Chi, and Turtle certainly looked the part as well. The main issues I have with the characters come from Master Roshi and the various enemies. Nappa being there was a little weird. Mai being able to transform and the rest of the regular enemies being mechanized in some way did feel kind of off. Part of the reason the enemies are so out of place is because apparently they are just costumes that were left over from a different Korean film called Sparkman. Just giving that movie a quick look shows me that this is factual. Master Roshi was okay. I mean, he kind of looked the part, but he was a huge dick personality-wise, which isn't very Master Roshi-like. I don't know, it was just a little off. But the worst parts character-wise come from the inconsistencies with power and abilities. Like Pilaf being jacked all of a sudden, Oolong having a frickin' Kamehameha, you know, stuff like that. Overall though, a lot of these characters felt like the characters within the manga, and the characters are one of the most important parts of any adaptation. If you can get the characters right, the rest isn't as important. In regards to adapting the plot, I'm going to give this film a 2.5 out of 3. In general, as far as actually adapting the story as close to the manga as possible, I was actually pleasantly surprised to see how accurate this film was to the manga. A lot of the scenes were almost adapted perfectly panel for panel, and a lot of the stuff they left out was mainly just to make the movie flow better, which I really appreciate. A lot of people think that everything needs to be spot on story-wise for an adaptation to work, but honestly, no matter how you look at it, it's impossible to adapt everything. It just can't be done. But if you can adapt the core elements of what made the original story work, you've got the potential for a good adaptation on your hands. The only reason I can't give this category a 3 out of 3 is because the ending of this film kind of throws a lot of the original ending out the window, and I don't even know how to describe it. It just goes off the walls. It's bonkers, okay? The ending is bonkers. Otherwise, this is probably as good as it can get when it comes to adapting the first saga of Dragon Ball. They just didn't stick the landing with the final sequence. And finally, in regards to this possibly being a good film and a good adaptation, I'm giving this film a 2 out of 4. This is just one of those movies that reeks with amateur filmmaking. This film is also littered with the feeling of, oh, it's so cheesy looking that it's actually enjoyable to watch and just pick apart and laugh and have a good time. I personally had a blast watching it, and if you're a Dragon Ball fan, I would recommend you give it a watch for yourself. But in terms of it actually being a great film, I wouldn't exactly call it that. As far as it being a good adaptation, this is actually a great adaptation. Almost everything, aside from the ending and a couple of little things here and there, is spot on to the source material. And like I said, a lot of the characters looked and felt like the actual characters from the manga. I was actually really surprised at how good and accurate of an adaptation this was, but it's far from perfect. The main thing that sets this movie back from being a 2 in this category would be the fact that it's impossible to find, other than watching online. And also the fact that subtitles for this film just don't exist. So it's impossible to enjoy this film to its full potential, along with the fact that not being able to understand the dialogue is also a big setback in determining if a lot of the situations are completely accurate to what happens in the manga. With that, Dragon Ball Sawara Son Goku Agiora Son Goku gets a total score of 6.5 out of 10. I was very surprised with how good of an adaptation this actually was, and if you're looking for something fun and ridiculous to watch while also getting that classic Dragon Ball vibe, I recommend you check it out. The second Dragon Ball adaptation was another unofficial one. However, this one was Taiwanese. This film is titled Dragon Ball: The Magic Begins. It came out in 1991, being based on the first Dragon Ball animated film, Dragon Ball: Curse of the Blood Rubies, which came out in 1986. Now I know, this is supposed to be manga versus movie rather than anime movie versus live action movie, but because this live action is something that needs to be experienced, and we were already talking about the other adaptations anyway, I figured I'd make an exception. So for this one, we're going to be comparing it directly to the Curse of the Blood Rubies, since that's what this one is actually based on. For context, Dragon Ball: Curse of the Blood Rubies is essentially a complete retelling of the first Dragon Ball saga, although many of the story elements and plot points are very similar to the manga, where it's basically the same. The main difference between the two is how the various characters first meet up with each other, and this film has a different main villain from Emperor Pilaf, this time being King Gurumeth. As we progress through these two films, you'll quickly notice that they are both extremely similar, to the point where it would make more sense to point out the differences rather than the similarities. This film was directed by Chung Liang Chang as one of his later movies, and I must say this is my personal favorite out of the 3 adaptations we're going to be looking at today, and you'll soon see why. An important thing to note about this film would be the fact that a lot of the characters' names and some of the overall terms were changed to distance itself from the actual Dragon Ball franchise, as I'm sure the people making this film didn't exactly want to get sued since, you know, they didn't have the film rights. For instance, Goku is instead named Monkey Boy, Bulma was named Sito, and Yamcha was named Mr. Westwood, of all things. Another example would be the fact that the Dragon Balls were instead called Dragon Pearls. But all those changes aside, they still kept the Dragon Ball name in the title, so it kind of makes all these changes redundant. Something to note before we dive into this one would be the fact that 2 versions of this film exist, that being the original version from 1991, and the remastered version called Dragon Ball Ultimate Edition, which came out in 2007, which is 15 minutes longer than the original version with the addition of new computer-generated effects, which mostly looks like someone just figured out how to use After Effects and they just kinda went ham for a few days. But either way, this is the better quality, more complete version of the film, therefore it is the version I've decided to look at today. If you're interested in checking out this film yourself, you can pick up either version of the film on Amazon, and I will have some links to those in the description. Now without further ado, let's take a look at how The Magic Begins compares to the first Dragon Ball animated film, Curse of the Blood Rubies. The movie begins with some spaceships headed toward a very cloudy planet. Then a bell signals the people of a remote village to start heading towards what I assume is the village church or some other important religious building. We then get our first look at the Dragon Pearls, although I'm just going to call everything by their actual Dragon Ball name, so Dragon Balls.
This Dragon Pearl is a treasure in our village. It has been with us for over 100 years now. It has watched over us and brought us peace and prosperity. And right now, I'm going to hand it over to our new village chief.
I'm all for believing whatever you want to believe as long as it doesn't, hurt anybody. But why would you suddenly give your sacred treasure over to the village chief? Are they the ones that personally take care of it within the village or something? I don't know, it seems a little weird. As everyone erupts in applause, we suddenly see those spaceships from earlier arriving in the village. And right off the bat, they start blowing everything up. And I've gotta say, for an unofficial B movie, these explosions are actually really impressive for practical effects. They actually blew up a lot of stuff for this film. The village chief then tells everyone inside the church to find shelter, even though they were already within the church. So he essentially told them to run outside and go find other shelter, which could potentially get them killed because, everything else is blowing up aside from the church. I feel like we should really be questioning this guy's leadership right about now. The chief then instructs his wife to take their daughter Jade and go find shelter as well. He also refuses to go with because he, by himself, needs to protect the Dragon Ball. Bruh. People are getting nuked outside, and you think you can protect that little Dragon Ball all by yourself? As if! We then get our first look at this army of invaders, led at the front by a character based on Bongo and a character based on Pasta, both of which are exclusive to Curse of the Blood Rubies. The army then begins committing mass genocide against these poor villagers, and while everyone is getting gunned down outside, the village chief and the monks are just praying as hard as they can, hoping all of this will just miraculously go away. What a foolproof plan! After the troops clear out the village, our main villain, whom is based on King Gurameth, comes down from the ship. And I must admit, aside from those cheesy effects that they've added over top, the costume actually looks pretty good. The king wants the Dragon Ball, but the chief is like, nah pal, I'll destroy it before I ever give it to you. The monks then decide to protect the chief, and for some reason the king just lets them outside. The king then teleports via some sort of energy ball, and appears in front of the monk entourage. And then he just kinda one-hit kills everybody and takes the Dragon Ball. If you could already one-hit kill this entire group, why didn't you just do that inside? Why did you even let them walk outside? Why? Did you want to show off your power? I don't get it! We then learn that the king has 2 Dragon Balls now, and he plans to summon Shenron and get the power to rule the universe. He also mentions that he doesn't know where the other 5 Dragon Balls are at the moment, but he does assume that one of them is in the east somewhere. In The Curse of the Blood Rubies, this sequence plays out a little bit differently. We open with a village that is being torn apart and excavated for these gems called Blood Rubies, at the request of the king. The villagers are obviously not very happy about this, specifically a little girl named Pansy who tries to fight back. Great name, by the way. Her father defends her, but ends up getting decked out by Bongo. Pansy then vows to get revenge on them herself. Bongo and Pasta then go meet with the king. In this version, the king basically only sits around and eats, while in The Magic Begins, he's actually pretty strong. We learn that the king can only satisfy his
Massive hunger
with the blood rubies, which is why he's been tearing up the village. But we also learn that he has a side quest of finding the Dragon Balls, to wish away his hunger forever. So he sends out Pasta and Bongo to go find them. So obviously the 2 films start out a bit differently, as The Magic Begins may be based on Curse of the Blood Rubies and based on its characters, but the whole film doesn't have anything to do with the actual Blood Rubies themselves. Both have a village getting destroyed in different ways, one of which is much more violent, but either way, both versions establish the same characters, just in different ways with different motivations.
I have heard that deep inside a thick forest, there lives a man by the name of Sparkle.
Are you kidding me? They named him Sparkle?
What the fuck?
Either way though, another big difference in this movie compared to Dragon Ball in general would be the fact that Grandpa Gohan is alive in this movie. The king instructs his goons to go get the Dragon Ball similar to Curse of the Blood Rubies, but as soon as he does that, the Dragon Ball starts flipping out. This obviously warns Gohan of the impending danger, so he warns Goku, or Monkey Boy, that no matter what happens to him, the Dragon Ball must be protected. Goku claims he won't let anything happen to Gohan or the Dragon Ball, or his magic pole.
Get over here!
At least in this version, the power pole actually has the ability to extend.
Good!
Grandpa Gohan then states that the pole nor the Dragon Ball can be stolen once again, and then proposes a training exercise between the 2 of them. Gohan blasts Goku into the trees with some sort of wind blast, and then this instantly turns into one of the best things I've ever seen in my entire life. Honestly, I wish I could just show you the entirety of this fight, but the copyright system prevents me from doing that.
Get over here!
Got him!
This is still one of the best things I've ever seen.
Let it go. You're blocked.
Forget it, I haven't lost yet.
You haven't lost yet, so you want more.
Boy!
Whoa! That took a turn I was not expecting.
1,000 years of death!
With his underhanded techniques, it appears Goku was able to win the fight.
Finish him! You eat all my beans!
The 2 of them then decide there is still one final round to decide the victor, which is done with rock, paper, scissors.
I'm in!
Wait. What the hell is this? I wasn't expecting to get hit with the heat like that. The thing is, Gohan says that Goku lost their round of rock, paper, scissors, but if we look closely at what they threw down, Goku clearly threw out scissors, while Gohan threw out paper, which would mean that Gohan was the one who actually lost. Unless I'm missing something here? Well, anyways, because Goku lost apparently, I'm convinced Gohan's a cheater, Goku now has to do all the cooking for the day.
That means you'll have to do all the cooking today.
I'm making fucking mac and cheese, and nobody can stop!
So Goku goes out hunting for a crocodile apparently, and he decides to go find this crocodile with absolute swag apparently. Oh hey, look, a string. Goku also apparently has the ability to fly, which is something that doesn't happen in the Dragon Ball manga until after meeting Tien. Goku then takes a small break to feed a bunch of monkeys. What a stand-up guy. Goku then locates a crocodile and jumps right off of a large waterfall. I feel like I've already seen this somewhere before. Goku then beats the ever-living out of the crocodile and begins heading back. We then get introduced to Bulma, who is of course hunting the Dragon Balls. As soon as Bulma locates the Dragon Ball, our enemy goons roll up in 2 tanks out of nowhere, going in that very direction. Bulma gets back into her Jeep and then runs into Goku carrying his meal. And instead of, hitting the brakes, she attempts to perform vehicular manslaughter. Luckily though, Goku's strength is enough to stop the vehicle. Goku then claims that Bulma looks strange and therefore must be a witch, so he takes an offensive stance.
My God, what's that?
Bulma then tries to kill a 12-year-old with absolutely no remorse, like we've seen before. Bulma then tries to run away, but Goku stops her. He then gets confused at the fact that she's a girl, because he's never seen one before.
You're a girl? Are you really a girl? Haven't you ever seen a woman before? No.
But the thing is, as soon as he first sees Bulma, he says this.
That girl looks strange.
So he obviously already knew she was a girl, yet he is still taken aback by the fact that she's a girl later in the same scene.
Hey, you can't touch me. My grandpa said that too. He said a boy mustn't touch a girl. He said that those who do are called babies.
What? Oh my God! This is the best thing ever! The two of them start babbling on until Goku eventually notices her Dragon Ball. Goku explains how he also has one, and then Bulma comes to the realization that those goons from earlier must be trying to steal it. So Goku immediately runs back to stop them. We then cut back to Grandpa Gohan, who senses a disturbance in the Force. As he looks outside to check it out, a bunch of goons just fly down lightly from the trees in an aerial drive-by. And somehow Pasta is already inside their hut and tries to light him up. Gohan stops her from taking the Dragon Ball and gives her a roundhouse kick. Bongo then blows down the door.
Say hello to my little friend.
And then tries to blow up the entire place with Gohan still inside. However, Gohan managed to sneak out to the well via a hole in the floor. Bongo then blows Gohan out of the hole in epic fashion. Goku then flies in at
Mach speed.
But unfortunately, the enemy has already left. And Gohan, nor the Dragon Ball, are anywhere to be found. Bulma arrives shortly afterwards and mentions the direction that the goons originally came from, which prompts Goku to immediately fly after them. However, Bulma stops him, and they decide to go find them together. They eventually catch up to the goons and get lit up with gunfire immediately, but that does not stop them. Instead, when they try to get closer again, Bongo pulls out the noob tube, which is unfortunately too much for them to handle. Bongo, Pasta, and the rest of the goons then ride off into the sunset. So, naturally, Bulma and Goku decide to ride an elephant and drop exposition.
Did you know that an adult African elephant can eat up to 136 kilograms of food each day?
The two of them then decide to pursue the Dragon Balls, because if they do, there's a chance they could also rescue Grandpa Gohan, who they believe is still alive. Now looking back at Curse of the Blood Rubies, we have a similar sequence, but it plays out a little bit differently. First off, similar to the manga, Grandpa Gohan is already dead, so that's already a big change in the live action. In this version, Goku also sets out for food by jumping off a mountain into the water, but captures a large fish instead of a crocodile. We then see Bulma and the goons heading after the Dragon Ball at Goku's hut. Bulma, once again, runs into Goku, tries to kill him, you know the drill by now. The two of them then head back to Goku's hut, because Bulma thinks that someone has already taken Goku's Dragon Ball. And sure enough, she was right. Well, at least they had the common courtesy to leave some money behind. The two of them then use one of Bulma's capsules to chase after them. They end up having a firefight, which eventually leads to Bulma's ship getting shot down, but Goku saves her with the power pole before she hits the ground, which causes her to pee herself. The two of them then decide to team up to go get the Dragon Ball back together. Going back to The Magic Begins, we see the village chief's daughter from earlier being chased by some sort of monster. Wait. No. Is that a pig man in blackface? Oh, come on, man. That's a real bruh moment right there. Racist undertones aside, this pig man apparently wants to take this 9-year-old as his wife. So not only is he racist, but he's also a strong believer in the fact that age is just a number. I really don't know how much more offensive this can get. Goku and Bulma hear that girl's cry for help, so Goku decides to put a stop to our racist pedo villain.
Granddad never mentioned that there were men as dark as this.
Oh, come on, Goku! You can't be racist too! What the heck? After our pig boy notices Bulma, he decides that he wants her instead, so Goku teaches him a lesson.
But I'm not done yet.
As Pig Boy tries to run away, Goku flies after him. After another smack, the Pig Boy decides to surrender. He then explains that he's actually a good guy. He just has a weakness for pretty girls because he wants to breed with them, to have pretty children.
Excuse me, what?
He then tries to attack the girls again, but Goku quickly puts a stop to it.
I'm very good at kissing asses, you know that. I can make you feel very special.
I don't like people kissing my ass.
The fuck did you just say?
Did this man just offer sexual acts to get out of this? What is even happening? The pigman then proclaims that he has other skills like transformation. So he demonstrates his power, and the three of them automatically forgive him. So naturally, he sucker punches Goku, turns into a bat, and tries to escape. But before he can get away, Goku smacks him out of the sky and he transforms into a normal overweight guy, which is apparently his true form. We then get some world building, where we find out this guy is the 91st descendant of the Pig Fairy, so they call him the Pig-Headed Wizard. To which Goku mentions that his grandpa told him he's the 91st descendant of the Monkey King, the two of which were brothers in the past, meaning that these two are distant ancestors, which is also not accurate to the source material. On that note, this is obviously supposed to be Oolong if you haven't figured that out yet. Going back to Curse of the Blood Rubies, we meet Oolong chasing Pansy in a similar scene, however, without the racism. But since we've already seen this whole sequence a few times already, it's basically summed up with Goku defeats Oolong and he ends up joining them, along with Pansy. Going back to The Magic Begins, Goku and Oolong notice that someone is nearby. That someone then tries to gun them down, which turns out to be a Yeehaw cowboy with his parrot companion. If it's not obvious already, this is supposed to be Yamcha and Puar. I guess deciding on a talking parrot is one way to adapt the character without being too obvious. Yamcha demands that they leave their valuables, in which case he'll spare their lives. Unfortunately for them, they don't have any money, so Goku decides to fight him instead. Yamcha lights him up, but Goku blocks every shot. When the cowboy outfit comes off, you know Yamcha means business. The two of them begin another epic fight, where Yamcha apparently also knows how to fly. Up and down the walls they go, leaving after images with a lot of their strikes. Goku eventually gets a face full of bricks, and then returns the favor by using the extending ability of his power pole.
My master will win! My master! My brother will win! My brother will win! I will win! My brother...
Glad to see Oolong and Puar's rivalry is portrayed elegantly in this film. Now that both of their weapons are gone, they only have one option.
Mortal Kombat.
What the fuck? What do I even say to that? They punched each other so hard that they ended up in a fucking PS1 game. Who thought this was a good idea? The two of them, evenly matched, eventually have a nose-picking standoff. That is until Bulma arrives.
Wow, he's so good looking. What? You call that good looking?
You know, not to call this guy ugly or anything, but I don't really think he's that attractive. So I'm just as confused as you, Goku. Goku then uses this opportunity to get a cheap shot. And because Yamcha is super nervous about women, he pieces out faster than Sonic. Going back to the Curse of the Blood Rubies, Oolong mentions that this area is dangerous because of a certain guy. And in a very similar fashion to the live action, Yamcha tries to gun them down and rob them, which leads to a very similar fight between the two, before Bulma eventually shows up, which causes Yamcha to run away because of his nervousness. Back in The Magic Begins, Jade, or Pansy, tells the group about how her village was destroyed and her family killed because of the Dragon Ball. Bulma mentions that the big bad guy is probably collecting all the Dragon Balls to get a wish from Shenron. Pansy then mentions that she went out looking for the Turtle Man for help. Oolong knows where the Turtle Man is located, so they all decide to go find him. And while they're talking about all this, Yamcha is listening in. And apparently so is Pasta, who just kinda showed up out of nowhere. Curse of the Blood Rubies shares a very similar scene, where they all decide to go find Master Roshi. But we also learn more about the Blood Rubies themselves and how they corrupted the king with greed. And we also learn he apparently already has 5 Dragon Balls. Yamcha was also listening during this scene, but Pasta was not present. Yamcha plans to go meet Master Roshi first and turn him against the others, also that he can sneak off and get the Dragon Balls for himself so that he can cure his nervousness around women. In The Magic Begins, Yamcha comes up with a similar plan, however we also learn that he has a Dragon Ball of his own that he stashed away. We then cut back to the king, who is informed by Bongo that Pasta located another Dragon Ball, which is the one carried by Bulma. The king then plans to ambush them at Roshi's Island since that's where they are going next. We then cut to Master Roshi, who apparently has a turtle head? Oh, never mind, that's better.
Moonwalk magic!
I'm not even surprised anymore. He then summons the Flying Nimbus and commands it to take him to see some pretty girls. However, because he is no longer
pure of heart,
he's unable to fly it. Yamcha then arrives and instantly gets jumped by Master Roshi. The two of them quickly duke it out, but Roshi takes him down, claiming that Yamcha was only there to steal his Flying Nimbus. Yamcha then warns Roshi about someone coming to fight him, pointing out Goku's group in the distance as the ones who are coming. As they arrive on the island, Master Roshi comes out ready to fight, but is distracted by Bulma's looks almost immediately.
See, I was right, brother. This guy's much worse than me.
I'm not sure about that one, Chief. You did wear blackface and try to assault a 9-year-old. Roshi does his mating dance for Bulma, and Roshi accuses Goku of wanting to fight him. The group denies this, and Roshi explains that Yamcha was the one that told him they wanted to battle. Upon getting found out, Yamcha still accuses Goku of being the one who wants to fight.
You lied to him and framed me. I'll teach you. Hi.
The two of them start another fight, but they stop because Bulma said so. Roshi then claims he has a way to determine which of them are lying.
Moonwalk magic!
I'm not sure if this is the method, but I like it. Roshi then summons the Flying Nimbus once again, explains how it works, and instructs the two of them to try riding it. Whoever is unable to do so is obviously the liar. Yamcha epically fails to the point where the Nimbus won't even get near him. And when Goku gives it a shot, he automatically knows how to ride it with style, proving his innocence. Roshi then decides to give Goku the Nimbus, since Goku's actually able to use it, unlike him. Yamcha claims he didn't mean to lie, he just wanted a chance to get the group's Dragon Ball. I don't know if that's any better, but okay. Which is where Roshi reveals that he also has a Dragon Ball, which also leads to the reveal that Yamcha has one as well. After some convincing by Roshi, Yamcha agrees to help the group and gives them his Dragon Ball. However, after getting flustered by Bulma, he cheeses out of there at sonic speed once again. Roshi then agrees to give them his Dragon Ball, but for a price. That price being a look at Bulma's melons. The group then goes inside the house to discuss what to do. Bulma comes up with a plan to give Roshi what he wants without having to do it herself, which is done by convincing Oolong to transform into Bulma, and because his body would now look just like hers, he could strip for Roshi instead.
It's me! It's me! 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 Me!
Oolong then decides to dress in drag.
Do you know how ugly you are?
Apparently Goku is a little bit transphobic. Oolong then actually transforms into Bulma, but he also gives her some bigger implants to please the Turtle Man.
Come here.
You know, you really need to see this to believe it. Oolong shows off the goods for the Dragon Ball, which causes this to happen. The group now has 3 Dragon Balls, and the king has 3 as well, so they question Roshi on where the final Dragon Ball could be. However, the previous situation made Roshi a very happy man, so he was unable to answer due to his horny days. Suddenly, a bunch of spaceships approach out of nowhere and start firing upon them. Bongo and Pasta then get beamed onto the island and blow up Master Roshi's house. The sudden attack brings Master Roshi back to his senses and he joins the fight. During the commotion, Bulma drops the Dragon Balls, and Pasta swoops in to steal them. Master Roshi instructs the group to escape while he takes care of them, so they hop on Goku's flying Nimbus and peace out. Having got what they came for, the enemies escape before Master Roshi can finish them off, though he does manage to take out a few ships. Bongo then blows the heck out of Roshi and whatever remained of his house. Now back in Curse of the Blood Rubies, we have almost the exact same sequence. Yamcha arrives early to trick Roshi into thinking they wanted to fight him. So to find out who's telling the truth, they go through the same Flying Nimbus test. Yamcha flees and Goku gets to keep the Nimbus. Roshi agrees to give them his Dragon Ball in exchange for seeing Bulma's, melons. So we have the same situation where Oolong transforms so Bulma doesn't have to do it herself.
Bouncy, 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 bouncy.
After they get the Dragon Ball, Pasta and Bongo launch an attack from a submarine that blows up Roshi's house, and they use a small robot to steal one of the Dragon Balls in the process. This pisses Roshi the frick off, so he unleashes a Kamehameha and completely obliterates them. However, they manage to escape last second. Goku then learns how to do the Kamehameha from watching Roshi, which surprises him, and Pansy asks Roshi to come with them so he can help save the day. However, Roshi refuses, claiming that Goku is already more than strong enough to save the day himself. The group then heads out, now only having 1 Dragon Ball while the king has the remaining 6, with plans to take the other 6 Dragon Balls from the king and save the village. Moving back to the Magic Begins, the king now has 6 of the Dragon Balls as well. However, the 7th one hasn't been located by either party as of yet. While Master Roshi didn't join up in Curse of the Blood Rubies, he does decide to tag along in this adaptation. Yamcha then reappears out of nowhere and also decides to join them. Master Roshi makes the connection that everyone in the group has some sort of relationship with the Dragon Balls, aside from Oolong. So Master Roshi tells him to get lost basically. Roshi also mentions that whenever 2 Dragon Balls come together, the remaining 5 will eventually find a way to each other in one way or another. For that reason, he believes that someone within the group must be hiding another. Sure enough, Oolong had one this entire time. The group then decides to get the other 6 from the king, along with dishing out some sweet revenge on the way. Now back in Curse of the Blood Rubies, the final sequence plays out like this. The group arrives at the palace and are instantly separated by gunfire. Goku fights Bongo, while the other 3 get shot out of the sky. At the same time, Yamcha also storms the palace on his own. The others eventually meet up with Yamcha in the castle, and then run into Pasta. Because Pasta is a girl, Yamcha is unable to fight her due to his nervousness around women. Luckily, they eventually manage to outrun her. Goku then defeats Bongo by crashing through a building, and the others enter the king's throne room, where Goku also happens to be now. The king then goes from a fat purple monster to a giant fat purple monster, and kills Bongo in the process.
You make a nice doormat.
We then learn that he's apparently been keeping the other 6 Dragon Balls within his stomach. So before the king can kill the group, Bulma throws the final Dragon Ball in his stomach and summons Shenron, causing the king to explode. Pansy then wishes her village back to its normal, peaceful self. So Shenron grants the wish, and they all live happily ever after.
I hate happy endings.
Now back to the Magic Begins. Let's see if the ending is similar. Damn! Who knew Oolong could be such a savage? Oh yeah. Anyway, with Oolong straight up murdering people, the others use his distraction to enter the village. Goku blocks a bunch of bullets while Oolong throws a nade.
Frag out! Triple kill.
But Pasta and some more goons manage to push them back. Roshi and the girls run into Bongo, but Roshi drops a fat energy blast to stop them. Goku, Oolong, and Yamcha take shelter under a house, and Yamcha takes care of some goons coming their way. Pasta reappears and faces off with Goku and then against Yamcha as well. This version of Yamcha may be nervous around women, but he sure didn't hesitate to spin kick one. As soon as Pasta gets back up, Oolong straight up murders her.
Fatality.
We cut back to Roshi and the girls running from Bongo's squad. However, they end up getting separated. Bongo goes after the girls, but before he can attack them, Roshi comes in with the sneak attack. Roshi and Bongo then throw down.
Jotaro!
Deal! Round 2. Fight.
Roshi appears to be on the losing side, so Bulma grabs Bongo's gun off the ground. The others arrive to meet up with the group as Roshi gets thrown. So Bulma takes this opportunity to straight up murder Bongo in a violent explosion. The group continues on and runs into a large collection of goons. Roshi blasts a bunch of them, and then Goku and Yamcha jump in to help take care of the rest. Then, out comes the final boss with a surprise attack. He demands they hand over the Dragon Ball, which they refuse. So Roshi and the king start having a beam struggle. That is until the king's spaceship drops an aerial attack to throw them back. The ship then beams down Grandpa Gohan, who is still alive. Seeing Gohan alive makes Goku instantly attack, but the dark side of the Force is too strong for him. The king then demands they hand over the last Dragon Ball, or he's going to kill Gohan. Goku begs them to hand over the last Dragon Ball, but Roshi knows that if they do, they'll all be dead anyway. So even though I don't know why, the king decides to kick Gohan towards them for some reason, getting rid of all his leverage in the process. The group then tries to escape, but the king traps them in some sort of force field, with blue color grading by the looks of it. And all of a sudden, all of the dead villagers start coming out of nowhere and surrounds the group from all sides. So I guess this means the king is also a necromancer with the ability to resurrect corpses that follow all of his commands. The king then forces the corpses to start attacking the entire group. Seemingly stuck in this situation, Goku summons the Flying Nimbus to get out, and attacks the king, putting a stop to all the zombies who drop instantly. However, Goku is no match for the king and is quickly defeated. Yamcha jumps in and is also quickly defeated. Oolong then brings out the big guns to keep him busy. Meanwhile, Roshi asks Gohan if he knows where the king hid the other Dragon Balls, to which Gohan states that he believes they are in his stomach. So they come up with the plan to get the Dragon Ball in his mouth so the balls will meet in his stomach, causing him to explode. Oolong is taken down, and Roshi moves up to execute the plan. We have another beam struggle, but with Gohan's help they are able to take down the king. Roshi then jumps in to force the Dragon Ball down his throat, but the girth is just too much to fit. So Goku uses the extending ability of the power pole to deep throat that thing right down. The king then starts rolling around in agony, and one of his ships comes in to save him. As the king gets beamed into his ship, the whole entire thing explodes, revealing Shenron, who is gold for some reason. Which, on that note, unlike in the actual Dragon Ball, they did not have to say a phrase to get Shenron to appear. Instead, apparently just putting the Dragon Balls together will make Shenron just, pop up. Shenron requests their one wish, so Pansy steps forward and wishes for her village and peace restored. Shenron grants the wish, and all the corpses on the ground suddenly get back up and everyone is alive and happy again. Our heroes are happy for their success, but Yamcha mentions he still has a wish, which is to fight Goku again. So the two of them duke it out. And oh god damn it, not again! After transforming back into their PS1 forms, the movie is over. So while the ending was a bit more violent and action-packed, at the end of the day, it was still kinda similar to the ending of The Curse of the Blood Rubies. Now that we've compared The Magic Begins to the movie it was based on, what would I rank this adaptation out of 10? When it comes to adapting the characters, I'm going to give this film a 1.5 out of 3. In general, most of the characters felt like the characters they were based on, some of them much more than others. For instance, I feel like Master Roshi in this movie was a perfect representation of Master Roshi within the manga, whereas the rest of them certainly contain elements of the characters they're based on, but a lot of them weren't quite on the same level as the previous film we looked at. Goku was pretty close to actual Goku, however he seemed a lot more aggressive than the Goku from the manga, at least from the early parts of the manga. Though that could also be explained with the fact that he wants revenge because they took Grandpa Gohan, and we all know that plot thread is not in the manga. Bulma was okay as Bulma. Yamcha was also okay, but nothing overly special. I'd say the most inaccurate out of the bunch was Oolong, but I don't exactly need to explain why. As far as the villains go, I think Pasto was a bit better in Curse Curse of the Blood Rubies, but Bongo was good, and the king in particular was a lot better in this version. He was actually powerful and threatening, so it added some real stakes to everything that was happening. So overall, I'd say while a lot of these characters aren't perfectly adapted by any means, most of them still felt like the characters they were supposed to be, and they all gave off that early Dragon Ball charm that's needed to make a movie like this work. When it comes to adapting the story, I'm going to give this film a 3 out of 3. Because this film was a direct remake of The Curse of the Blood Rubies, I can confidently say that this movie delivered when it came to adapting that story, while at the same time making the appropriate changes to make the story flow a bit better. For instance, the Blood Ruby subplot as a whole made sense for the animated movie, but in this version, since the villain was adapted into a much more power-hungry villain, he had no use for gems, and instead was only after universal domination, so making him chase after the Dragon Balls alone was a better fit for the themes of the story. The fact that the king also massacred Pansy's entire village and family for a single Dragon Ball also added to the motivation for her to seek out help. While in the animated film, she just kinda went off on her own because she was really pissed off. Otherwise, all of the story beats that were hit in the animated film were also adapted within this movie. Some things just happened a little bit differently to work better in this adaptation. For that reason, I have to give them credit where credit is due when it comes to adapting the story with the highest score I can give. Because, in my opinion, this adaptation also made the story even more entertaining than the original that's found within Curse of the Blood Rubies. Finally, when it comes to the overall quality of this film, as both an adaptation and a standalone film, I'm going to give this one a 2.5 out of 4. As an adaptation, I think they nailed this one. The story was adapted perfectly, and the only thing they needed to improve a little bit were the characters. And they also probably should have ditched those racist undertones with Oolong, because that was not an epic gamer moment. But when it comes to the quality of this as a film, that's where it loses some points. To be completely honest, I had an absolute blast watching this film, and it's easily my favorite out of the 3 we're looking at today. It was just so bad and cheesy at points that I couldn't stop laughing, while at the same time, it also had moments that were actually pretty cool and entertaining. Overall, I'd just say this one is so bad that it's great. And you can also really tell that the crew making this one gave it their all, as a lot of the costumes actually looked great, as did the props. The fights were pretty well choreographed, most of the time. And they also went all out on the practical effects. I couldn't even count how much stuff they ended up blowing up to make it look crazy and over the top like the actual story. Plus, the amount of extras they had to direct at times shows us that everyone, including the extras, really gave it their all. The only problem is that this is still a very amateur film, and it's far from a masterpiece. In fact, even if you're a huge fan of Dragon Ball, I wouldn't recommend this or the other film if you're not a fan of B-movies in general. But if you are looking for a good classic Dragon Ball movie that you can have an absolute blast watching, filled with laughter, cringe, confusion, and even cheers, I highly recommend you give this one a watch, as watching the whole thing in its entirety is something that needs to be experienced to really appreciate. With that, Dragon Ball The Magic Begins gets a total score of 7 out of 10. Last, and definitely least, is Dragon Ball Evolution, the infamous Hollywood adaptation. That is also the only official Dragon Ball live action to date. Evolution also has quite the history. First and foremost, 20th Century Fox acquired the film rights to Dragon Ball back in 2002, and were itching to make a movie out of the franchise directly after acquiring the rights. The studio originally approached Stephen Chow to direct the film the same year they acquired the rights. Chow almost took the offer because he was a huge fan of Dragon Ball. However, he decided it was too big a task for him to direct, so he passed on the offer. However, he did end up signing on to be one of the main producers of the movie. The studio would also ask individuals such as Zack Snyder, Robert Rodriguez, and even George Lucas if they wanted to direct, but they all declined. The directing job would eventually be accepted by James Wong, and the filming began in 2007. As far as the cast goes, Justin Chatwin would go on to play Goku, James Marsters would play Piccolo, Emmy Rossum would play Bulma, Chow Yun-fat would play Master Roshi, and Jamie Chung would play Chi-Chi. Everyone else really isn't worth mentioning. The movie eventually came out in spring of 2009, and the budget is also somewhat of a mystery, as there are 3 different reports. At first, it was stated the budget was $100 million, then they eventually backpedaled to $50 million, and eventually $30 million. Regardless regardless of what the budget actually was, the movie only ended up bringing in $58.2 million at the box office. So all things considered, the movie could have been profitable if the budget was actually $30 million, but needless to say, it was considered both a critical and financial failure. This was also kind of a big issue for Fox, as they had planned to make Dragon Ball Evolution the next big film series, and had already planned multiple sequels. They even began writing the second film before the first was even released, and many of the actors such as Justin Chatwin and James Marsters have stated that they had a 3-film contract. Although, Justin also mentioned the talks of 7 films being possible, going as far to say the story would really get good within the next film. However, due to the fact the movie ended up flopping in every possible aspect, all planned sequels were cancelled, and a Dragon Ball live action has not been touched ever since. And although there are currently no plans to make another Dragon Ball live action, it should be noted that with the recent deal Fox made with Disney, Disney currently have the film rights to Dragon Ball, and could therefore make another live action movie in the future.
Well, let's hope it doesn't happen again.
With all that history out of the way though, let's ask a few questions before we actually dive in. Is Dragon Ball Evolution actually as bad as everyone says? And how does it compare to the manga? Let's check it out. The movie opens up with a narration explaining events from the past, which is already a horrible sign for any movie. If the plot is so scuffed that it needs to be spoon-fed to the viewer at the beginning of the film to make any sense later, we got a problem on our hands. The narration basically tells us that thousands of years ago, Piccolo and his disciple Ozaru came down from space and started massacring everybody, to the point where humanity was almost extinct. Eventually, a group of warriors created something called the Mafu Ba, which was able to imprison Piccolo deep within the earth for all eternity. And for some reason, after Piccolo's imprisonment, Ozaru just kind of disappeared, and the world has since remained peaceful for thousands of years. Now, just from this opening narration alone, I can already tell they f***ed up the story. In the manga, a lot of these plot elements are there, but everything happened vastly differently. For one, these events did not happen thousands of years ago, but instead about 300. In Dragon Ball, there are these things called Guardians, which are basically godlike beings that look after a planet. 300 years ago, a Namekian was given the opportunity to become Earth's new Guardian. However, the current Guardian was like, "Nah son, you got some evil in you." So that Namekian found a way to expel every ounce of evil out of its body, leaving only the good behind. That Namekian then became Kami, the new Guardian of Earth. At the same time, the evil it expelled eventually took on its own form, which would become King Piccolo. So naturally, being a literal manifestation of evil, King Piccolo was pretty pissed off and decided to conquer the planet. Long story short, he killed a lot of people and created his own army of minions to help him do it. King Piccolo and his minions eventually fought the dojo of Master Mutaido, and killed everyone aside from Mutaido and 2 of his disciples, those disciples being Roshi and Shen. The 3 of them barely made it out alive. So after training a great deal, Mutaido came up with a technique called the Mafu Ba, which would be able to imprison Piccolo within a rice cooker that's designed to contain evil. So he goes up to King Piccolo and uses the Mafu Ba to imprison him immediately. However, using the Mafu Ba apparently comes at a price, as using the technique killed Mutaido in the process. Roshi then took the rice cooker with Piccolo trapped inside and threw it into the deepest part of the earth he could find, where Piccolo remained trapped for 300 years. So although some elements from the manga are present in the movie, there's a lot missing at the same time. The other thing that stands out would be the fact that Ozaru is apparently Piccolo's disciple. That never happened in the manga. In fact, the Ozaru, or Great Apes, are only present as an ability that Saiyans possess. I guess the movie is just trying to make us believe that Piccolo and a Saiyan were working together in the past. However, for some reason, after Piccolo was captured, the Ozaru also disappeared for no reason. So by Dragon Ball logic, would that mean that a Saiyan who was supposed to be helping Piccolo just kind of disappeared for no reason? Okay, sure. Whatever you say. I'll go with it. I mean, it sounds kind of stupid, but this is an adaptation, so not everything's gonna be the same. I get that. Anyway, we haven't even started the film officially yet, and I'm already out here ranting about the manga comparisons, so let's see if they maybe explain some of this a little bit better within the film.
The first rule is, there are no rules.
What does that have to do with Dragon Ball? Oh great, the opening shot is slow motion sweat.
There he is!
Good to know Goku is a mouth breather. Then we get the most bizarre fight scene in any of these movies, where Grandpa Gohan and Goku fight on top of some clotheslines? Oh yeah, Grandpa Gohan is also alive in this one, by the way.
Prepare to eat dirt.
Not gonna lie, I'm confident that all of the fights we've looked at in the previous two movies are not only better choreographed, but they're also more entertaining. This is just a train wreck. I can already tell this movie is going to be full of slow-mo, and I don't like it. Who made this movie again? Yeah, f you. Gohan pulls out some sort of energy wave to make Goku
eat dirt.
Shadow Crane Strike.
Oh, so that's what it's called. What a memorable Dragon Ball technique. This could be a reference to the Crane School that Tien is from, but I don't believe the movie is that smart. Gohan tells Goku to stop fighting like a chump and use his ki, which Goku apparently can't do. If you haven't realized it by now, these events are supposed to be based on the original Dragon Ball. Yet, something is a little off here, but I just can't put my finger on it. Oh yeah! Goku isn't a child! Instead, he's supposed to be 18 and goes to high school. Excuse me, what? Through the dialogue, we learn that Goku is apparently different. So he doesn't have any friends and gets picked on a lot. And he also doesn't know how to talk to girls or anything like a normal high school kid. Which, to be fair, Kid Goku was always really oblivious since he didn't know anything about the outside world. So he was always doing weird things in social situations since he doesn't know any better. But if you expect me to believe that this guy has been going to school for probably years now, and he hasn't learned a single shred of social skills? Come on, bruh, this ain't it! Anyway, we also learn that today is apparently Goku's 18th birthday, so Gohan decides to give him his prized possession, a Dragon Ball, and explains how finding all 7 will grant him one wish. Goku is basically like, yeah, cool, whatever, and then he leaves. Then we get to see Goku go to school, like he totally didn't do within the manga. And as he arrives, his bike instantly gets ran over by some bullies. To be fair, that is destruction of property, and Goku should totally press some charges or something.
Hey, Fuller, you just wrecked my bike!
Oh, how could I forget? One of Goku's many archenemies, Frieza, Cell, and Fuller.
Make me pay Giko.
Giko? How long did it take the writers to come up with that? Goku can't fight back because he knows Grandpa Gohan will be mad, so instead he makes very angry poop faces. If I put up my hood, I'll look edgy and cool. That'll show him. Fuller then walks into the school with the clear love interest of the story. Notice how she looks back in sympathy as if she actually has any interest in this twerp whatsoever. We then cut to Piccolo on an airship looking down with his hood up, like another edgelord. Must be a common theme in this movie.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
Piccolo then drops an energy ball and blows up an entire village. We then cut to Mai within said village looking for a lady who has a Dragon Ball. The lady eventually reveals herself and gives Mai the Dragon Ball. Shortly after that, Piccolo also shows up, and then Mai kills the lady off screen. Now, something to note about this would be the fact that Piccolo wouldn't be introduced until chapter 135 of the manga, while the vast majority of this film adapts the much earlier chapters of the manga. So they're essentially mashing the Emperor Pilaf saga and the King Piccolo saga while ignoring everything in between. Another thing that kinda bugs me about all this would be the fact that we never find out how Piccolo was freed within the film. We only learn about the fact that he was imprisoned thousands of years ago from that narration at the beginning, but at no point do they ever explain how he got out. Instead, he just kind of shows up. In the manga, Piccolo was released by Pilaf, Mai, and Shu, as they basically wanted to use King Piccolo's power to their advantage. Essentially, their plan was free Piccolo, use the Dragon Balls to give him his youth and power back, and then let Piccolo take over the world. Once he eventually does, they wanted to make a deal where Piccolo would give them half of the world to rule, in return for freeing him in the first place. So although at first I was kind of confused on why Mai, of all characters, is the one helping Piccolo throughout the movie, I guess it kind of makes sense. And I guess we're also supposed to assume that Mai alone was the one who freed Piccolo, as Pilaf and Shu are not in this movie. Except we never learn a thing about Mai, or what her motivations are, or anything, as she literally only says like 3 lines throughout the entire film, so she's barely even a character outside of just being a mindless henchman. And as a viewer, if you didn't already know that Pilaf, and Mai for that matter, freed Piccolo within the manga, it would be basically impossible to connect the dots that she must have been the one to free Piccolo in the first first place. Instead, it just kind of feels like Piccolo freed himself somehow. But again, it's never explained or mentioned or anything, so even if he did, it's kind of redundant. Either way, at the very least, the plot element of Piccolo hunting the Dragon Balls to get his youth back is the same. We then cut back to Goku in school learning about eclipses. You know, totally accurate to the source material. While in class, Goku stops paying attention and starts staring at that girl, in the least obvious way possible. He then starts having this weird fantasy where she's eating a strawberry in a field of flowers. Goku has a strawberry fetish confirmed. The teacher interrupts his wet dream before he starts going to town, and asks him what our ancestors would say about the upcoming solar eclipse.
Well, my grandfather would say beware of the Nemics.
What? First of all, I know I'm the last person that should be talking about this because I mispronounce everything. But this is a big budget movie. How the hell are you guys gonna say Namekians wrong? And another thing, everyone, including Piccolo himself, didn't even know they were Namekians until Dragon Ball Z, when Vegeta showed up. But Goku basically makes a fool of himself saying that these alien Nameks almost destroyed the world over 2,000 years ago, and everyone in class is just as confused as us. We then find out this school has dumb lockers that you have to scan with an ID to open, except they apparently suck. The love interest can't get her paper out for class, so out of nowhere, Goku can suddenly use his ki to open every single locker with a single hand gesture. The girl catches him because he's super obvious about it, and asks him if he just did that, which he straight up admits. Except this girl knows about ki as well.
Wait, you know about ki?
Just because my name is Chi-Chi doesn't make me a complete idiot.
Oh! So this is Chi-Chi. That makes sense. Except, you know, Goku was never interested in Chi-Chi throughout the entirety of Dragon Ball. Chi-Chi literally had to trick him into marrying her because she was obsessed with him, not the other way around.
Right, because there's a lot stupider names than Chi-Chi.
Bruh! Your name is fucking Goku! How do you have any right to criticize her about her stupid name? Basically, this whole entire sequence shows us Goku's awkward nature, and Chi-Chi invites him to a party she's having that night. Goku gets all swagged out to go to Chi-Chi's party, and decides to take the Dragon Ball with him for whatever reason. Meanwhile, Gohan makes dinner and gets a cake ready because it is Goku's birthday, but apparently Goku already left. Goku rolls up to Chi-Chi's place for the party, which is a castle-like mansion. I guess this could be a reference to the Ox King's castle, but there's no way the movie is smart enough for that. Instead, this basically shows us that Chi-Chi is not only popular, but extremely rich. The bullies outside take notice of Goku trying to infiltrate the party, and tell him to scram. Goku decides to finally stand up for himself, so the bullies surround him. Goku tells them he's not going to fight. So naturally, this guy pours water on the ground. The quintessential most intimidating thing you could possibly do. A fight breaks out, but Goku basically dodges everything and causes them all to hit each other. At the same time, how do these random bullies just know karate moves? Goku takes them all down with his dodge no jutsu. Chi-Chi and Big Bad Fuller come outside, and Goku suddenly goes from awkward beta male to absolute Chad in a single scene.
Hey, thanks for inviting me to your party. Oh, and Fuller, your boys, they've been showing me what they got. Nothing.
Fuller pulls out his trademark Excalibur and starts trying to take Goku down, but the dodge no jutsu proves to be too strong once again. That slide though.
Geeko. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Having gained the acceptance of the crowd, Goku starts hanging out with Chi-Chi.
You've never done this before, have you?
Yes, many times. In my head.
Yikes! As if any girl would still talk to you after that.
We're a lot alike.
Goku explains that it's his birthday, and mentions Gohan calls it his grand entrance. Obvious foreshadowing. He also mentions that his grandpa is supposed to explain what happened to his parents now that he's 18. That basically ends the school segment of the movie, as we don't go back there again. So I just wanted to quickly say that it was probably the worst possible way to introduce Goku. I know this is supposed to make him more normal and relatable, but everything about that introduction is as far out of touch with the story as you could possibly be. But at the same time, a storyline like this could have totally worked if it were Gohan instead of Goku, because we did get to see Gohan's high school life during the Great Saiyaman saga, which I personally really liked, even if most fans didn't. The problem is, while this plotline would be perfect for Gohan, it doesn't work for Goku at all. Just kind of seems like a missed opportunity and a massive f*** up at the same time, but that basically summarizes this whole entire movie. Back to the film, we catch up with Gohan, who senses a disturbance in the Force. Out of nowhere, Mai breaks into the house and starts tossing around shuriken, but Gohan just deflects them all like they're nothing. In the earlier scene with Mai, she had a gun. Why wouldn't she just use that? Edgelord Piccolo then walks in and gives Gohan the Force choke since the Dragon Ball isn't there. Gotta give them props to this scene because it's actually pretty cool, but since when can Piccolo actually use the Force? We then cut back to Goku, and he somehow gets the feeling that something is terribly wrong with his grandpa. So he ditches Chi-Chi to go check on him. Goku runs all the way back to find his house in ruins. Gohan is still alive, but only alive enough to tell Goku that Piccolo is back and chasing the Dragon Balls. Goku gets this weird premonition of the future, where Piccolo is destroying the world because sure he does. And before he passes away, Gohan tells Goku to find Master Roshi, and get his help to find the remaining Dragon Balls, so they can banish Piccolo from the world. And for some reason, they need to do it before the eclipse. Goku buries Gohan, and we find out he's a soccer fan. He begins pouting through his wrecked house, and we get a look at Gohan's gi. More foreshadowing, yay! Next thing we know, someone is entering the house. And oh boy, it's Bulma!
Are you Piccolo?
Yeah, Goku, because this teenage girl totally looks like an alien race. And you totally didn't get a look at Piccolo through that glimpse into the future, you ding-darn moron.
Somebody stole my Prometheum orb.
Yeah, because Bulma totally didn't know they were called Dragon Balls from the start in the manga. Oh wait, she did. If you can't tell by now, these next few scenes are based on how the characters originally met in the manga. However, since we've already covered that part of the manga in depth with the first movie, you already know how everything plays out, so I'm not going to be repeating it. But at least they kept in the fact that Bulma tries to kill Goku.
My father found that Prometheum orb 20 years ago and you stole it from me last night.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Me either, kid. Me either. Anyway, long story short, Bulma had a Dragon Ball stolen from her last night, and Goku basically informs her that there are 7 different ones. Bulma shows us a flashback of her catching a glimpse of the thief before they escaped with her Dragon Ball. And the thing is, Bulma clearly got a look at the person who stole it. Yet when she sees Goku, she automatically assumes that he was the one who took it, even though the thief was female. Come on, Bulma, I thought you were supposed to be smart. Bulma explains how she made a device to track the Dragon Balls, which is how she ended up here.
Well, you made a Dragon Ball energy locator? Cool.
Dragon Ball Energy, DBE. Catchy name.
Oh, I get it. DBE. Dragon Ball Evolution. I bet you're patting yourselves on your f***ing back for that one.
Oh my god, that is funny!
Bulma then explains that she's trying to find the Dragon Balls to somehow make them into an unlimited source of energy.
Good luck with that.
Which really doesn't make any sense, because the Dragon Balls have never been a source of energy. Goku and Bulma then decide to team up. She helps him find Master Roshi, and he'll help her find the Dragon Balls. Bulma pulls out a capsule vehicle like the manga.
Cool.
They ride off. We then get a shot of the 2 of them in the city. Goku is eating a giant hunk of meat for some reason, which I guess is supposed to hint at his eating habits from the manga. Bulma explains that she can't find evidence of this Roshi guy being listed.
You try Master?
Suddenly, Goku senses his grandfather, whatever that means. And suddenly, Bulma's tracker starts showing another Dragon Ball nearby, which, why they didn't notice there was a Dragon Ball nearby earlier is beyond me. They then run up to this old building in the middle of this futuristic city, surrounded by nothing, which is supposed to be the Kame house. The 2 of them break into Roshi's house. Goku's clumsy ass knocks over a bowling ball or something like that, which sends all these rocks flying in the air. Although that bowling ball probably made a ton of noise on its own, Goku feels the need to pull some Matrix level moves out of his ass to catch the rocks. Although he fails to catch one, which hits a pot. You're telling me that sound woke up Roshi, but the bowling ball didn't? This movie's doo-doo! Roshi wakes up and instantly starts to fight Goku. Which, by the way, this is the worst looking adaptation of a character in this entire movie. That looks nothing like Master Roshi! The 2 of them have another awful fight, but Bulma breaks it up before it can get any more nauseating. Oh, never mind. It got worse. Goku releases a ki blast or something, and straight up murders Bulma, which it's about time he finally hit her back after getting shot in every adaptation so far.
Shadow Crane Strike.
Oh, never mind. He just brought out that totally iconic Dragon Ball move again.
How's Gohan?
Come on, guys. Roshi then explains how he trained Gohan in the past.
I am Muten Roshi, the principal!
I get that he's trying to act over the top and goofy like Master Roshi, but again, this is the worst betrayal I've seen so far.
But before he died, he asked me to find you and to tell you that Piccolo has returned.
Are you sure you don't want to try that line again there, bud? A lot of pointless exposition later, Roshi agrees to go get his Dragon Ball to help.
Bikini Quarterly?
Oh, that's a collector's edition.
They're trying really hard to make this a believable Roshi, but I ain't buying it, guys. This is not my Roshi. Goku ends up finding the Dragon Ball because it magically starts glowing, and he gets another weird vision of the future where everything blows up. Roshi says that Goku is apparently the key to stopping the apocalypse or something, which will happen when the eclipse happens. Yada yada, they all agree to find the Dragon Balls together. We then cut back to Piccolo's airship, which looks a lot like Boba Fett's now that I'm seeing it. But I guess to be fair, Piccolo did have Pilaf's airship in the manga. Piccolo flexes his power by evaporating an entire lake to get a Dragon Ball, and then we're back to Goku. That was quick.
Taught to master the energy of the three elements: air, fire, and water.
When did this become Avatar? Roshi makes Goku carry all of his stuff so that he can get stronger, which is another nod to the manga where he made Goku wear a weighted turtle shell on his back. The three of them then set off, and arrive at some sort of exclusive temple or training ground. Oh, just kidding, it's not exclusive anymore. Oh, and Chi-Chi's also here fighting people, by the way. I take back everything I've said so far. If you use the Wilhelm scream in a film, it's automatically a masterpiece. That's just the rules, people.
There are no rules.
Fuck! Wow. Chi-Chi and Goku are both surprised to see each other. Aw, dog, how obvious do you gotta be? Chi-Chi explains that she's here to train for a tournament, as she's also a fighter. And somehow she heard about Gohan's death? Which, I'm no genius, but you'd think that law enforcement would be a little bit concerned with Gohan suddenly dying with no witnesses, and Goku fleeing the scene shortly after. Shouldn't that make him the prime suspect in a possible murder? Just saying, if Chi-Chi already knows about his death, the info has obviously gotten around. Shortly after, Bulma gets another Dragon Ball signal, so they all head out.
Master the second level of airbending.
Seriously, am I watching Avatar? What is this?
Hadouken!
This green screen has not aged well. Next thing you know, the three of them fall into a random hole in the ground, and a random guy comes over to check it out. And sure enough, it's Yamcha, who made the hole in the first place. Roshi then gives us a literal repeat of all the information we already know, and then we learn there's a Dragon Ball right nearby underground. That Dragon Ball locator really picks and chooses when it wants to go off, doesn't it? Roshi flies up and asks Yamcha for help in return for a lot of money. Why Roshi didn't fly up earlier is beyond me. I guess they really needed to remind us this movie has a plot, if you can even call it that.
Now you're talking, bro.
Oh my god! If it couldn't get any worse. They turned Yamcha into a surfer dude, and I thought it couldn't get any worse than Roshi.
Well, everything happens for a reason, bro.
Yamcha uses his tools to help them break through the earth, which leads them to a cave. We cut back to Piccolo, and learn that Mai has been following Roshi, and she informs Piccolo that Roshi is training Goku. Mai offers to go stop them, but Piccolo is like, nah, we're gonna need more than you. So he uses this machine to extract his blood, which apparently allows him to create minions. Piccolo did have minions in the manga, except to create them he just threw up an egg. We then cut back to Goku and the others at some sort of volcano area, which, by the way, if this area is supposed to be underground, why are there clouds?
Peace and right! I just tried my neck!
I hate this movie. They locate the Dragon Ball across a big pit of lava, and before they can come up with a plan to get it, Piccolo's minions show up. And Goku rips off one of their arms to use as a sword, which is where they find out that cutting them causes them to regenerate. Therefore, the only way to kill them is with the lava. At least I think that's what's happening. The entire scene is edited so poorly I can barely tell what's going on. So I shit you not, Goku gets the great idea to use the minions' bodies as a bridge for him to jump across the lava to get the Dragon Ball.
Impressive!
Like, we saw earlier that Roshi can literally fly. Why the hell wouldn't Roshi just fly over and get it? Goku gets the Dragon Ball and gets another view of the future before Mai shows up out of nowhere and tries to steal the Dragon Ball. So Goku knocks her away and then he fast travels across the lava. Goku expresses his fear about the Dragon Balls showing him the future, and apparently he's a lot more worried about Ozaru killing everyone. So instead of Piccolo, Goku decides he needs to defeat Ozaru, which, by the way, I should have mentioned this earlier. Basically, the Dragon Balls have never had this future-telling ability in the manga. Bulma mentions that the eclipse is only 2 days away, and since they likely can't get the rest of the Dragon Balls in time, Roshi mentions another way they can stop Piccolo. So they head out. And oh look! Mai was listening this whole time! God damn it! I know everyone is brain dead in this movie, but why, at no point, did anyone think they should, you know, capture Mai and get information out of her? Or just take her with them so she can't cause any more problems? Idiots! Everyone fast travels to this random temple outside of the city, where Roshi talks to this random old guy, who I guess is supposed to be based on Master Mutaito or maybe Master Shen? I honestly don't know. Either way, Roshi asks this guy for help crafting another Mafuba to capture Piccolo. We then cut to Chi-Chi in a tournament fighting Mai, who cuts Chi-Chi and then forfeits, so she could steal some of her blood. Goku shows up conveniently after Mai leaves. Apparently the temple Goku is at is also conveniently nearby where this tournament is being held.
Are you in the tournament?
No, I'm here for something else.
Something more important than me?
Goku, that's a big red flag. You better run, buddy. We then get some forced development between Bulma and Yamcha even though they have zero chemistry. Basically just forcing it down our throats since the two of them get together in the manga.
That's right. Piccolo needs all 7. He still can't make his wish either.
Wow! That's literally the only intelligent line Yamcha gets in this entire movie. Meanwhile, Roshi and Goku are doing dumb stuff as per usual, and Roshi brings up the Kamehameha, where apparently you need to do this extremely dumb dance to pull it off. Roshi unleashes the blast, which lights a fucking candle? Just fucking do it! I don't know if you guys remember from earlier, but the first time we saw the Kamehameha in the manga, Roshi blew up an entire mountain. Now that same iconic attack has been reduced to a fire lighter? I don't think there's been a time in my life I've ever been this disappointed in something. Roshi is then like, hey man, just go ahead and practice this new technique by lighting all these torches. You got it, pal. Goku does the same stupid dance, but apparently he sucks at it. Eventually, after a ton of failed attempts, he decides to just light a torch with a candle to make his pathetic self feel just a little bit better. But Chi-Chi catches him in the act. She then gives him a little training game to play, where he gets to step a little bit closer to her for every torch he lights. So right off the bat, he's able to do it on his first try. Guess the key to using new techniques is thinking with your dong. Though he might have blew his load a little too soon because then he messes up. Oh wait, just kidding, he gets way better because he can suddenly light all 3 at once. As his reward, Goku gets a smooch. By the way, I just wanted to point out that even live-action Goku has kissed a girl before, meaning that this Goku is already way cooler than Goku in Dragon Ball Super.
Kakarot, you've never kissed someone?
No, of course not. Why?
We then cut to Bulma getting woken up by a noise, so she walks out and sees Chi-Chi sneaking out of Goku's room.
Chi-Chi?
At what point did Bulma ever meet Chi-Chi in this movie? How does she even know who Chi-Chi is? Bulma and Yamcha suspect Goku of getting some action since Chi-Chi came out of his room, but then Goku rolls up out of nowhere. The Dragon Ball locator then conveniently starts going off, meaning Chi-Chi stole their Dragon Balls. As Chi-Chi is running away, she gets taken down by Chi-Chi? The two of them start duking it out and a fire starts, but Goku rolls in to help. Since there are 2 Chi-Chis, Goku doesn't know which one is which, so he automatically just helps whichever Chi-Chi talked to him first. So he knocks out the real one, and gets shot. Fake Chi-Chi runs away, and morphs back into Mai, and escapes. So hold on a second. I know we've seen some really dumb stuff in this movie so far, but you expect me to believe that Mai found out where the group was going back at the lava pit, followed them all the way to that temple, found out Goku's love interest was Chi-Chi beforehand, so she could enter the tournament that just happened to be nearby, and somehow get paired up with Chi-Chi in a fight, just so she could steal some of Chi-Chi's blood. All so she could disguise herself as Chi-Chi and steal the Dragon Balls. All the while, she somehow found the time to purchase the exact same outfit Chi-Chi happened to be wearing that night? Bull f***ing shit. How stupid does this movie think we are to believe that? Anyway, even though Goku could tank bullets in the manga, this gunshot apparently has him on the brink of death. And while on the brink of death, Goku meets up with Grandpa Gohan in the afterlife, or something like that, and asks him how to defeat Ozaru, to which Gohan tells him to believe in himself. Next thing we know, Roshi uses a f***ing Kamehameha to bring Goku back to life. What? I take back what I said. This is the single stupidest thing in this entire movie. Like, seeing that has made me physically angry. But before I lose my mind any further on this stupidity, the old guy from earlier gives Roshi the Mafuba, or the container, and the group heads out. Apparently they are headed to a place called the Dragon Temple, because apparently this is the only place you can use the Dragon Balls to summon Shenron, even though you can summon Shenron literally anywhere in the manga, as long as you have all 7 Dragon Balls. Anyway, now that Mai stole the rest of the Dragon Balls, Piccolo now has all 7, and is about ready to get his wish. Piccolo puts the Dragon Balls in place, and a big rock temple just appears out of the ground, creating what I guess is the Dragon Temple. Meanwhile, Yamcha drives off a cliff.
Odoyle rules! Odoyle rules!
I wish that is what happened. But Yamcha drives off a cliff and his Jeep can suddenly fly. Why have you not been using the Jeep's flying ability until now? That would clearly be faster than just driving from place to place. Piccolo stares at the Dragon Balls for a little too long.
I have to stop it before he finishes the prayer!
Wait, what prayer? Oh, that one. Roshi and Piccolo both launch an attack that collides mid-air, subsequently knocking the Dragon Balls out of place and causing Yamcha's flying Jeep to crash. In the process of crashing, they also lose the Mafuba container. Even though everyone just crashed and were in a very dire situation, Goku uses this opportunity to change into Gohan's gi for some reason, mainly just for fan service, I guess. Piccolo jumps down to confront Goku.
Woo! Superhero landing!
And even though Piccolo doesn't even mention Ozaru, Goku says this nonsense.
I will defeat Ozaru, and I'm here to destroy you.
Naturally, Piccolo informs him of the truth.
You will become Ozaru.
What? No.
You sure you don't want to act a little more shocked about that one? Anyway, just as Goku finds out about this, the eclipse happens and Goku transforms into Ozaru. Again, none of this nonsense is accurate to the manga at all, so it's pointless to even bring it up anymore. But basically in the manga, Saiyans turn into great apes or Ozaru whenever they look at a full moon. But for some reason, the movie decided to change that so it only happens on a blood moon solar eclipse. And again, Ozaru, or Saiyans for that matter, never served Piccolo in any fashion in the manga. Through this, we also learn that Goku traveled here by meteor, and for some reason on his 18th birthday, that was supposed to be the time he transformed. But I thought only the blood moon was supposed to make him transform because he definitely didn't transform the second he turned 18. This movie can't even follow its own rules. That aside, okay, Goku was Ozaru this whole time. Sure, whatever, I get it. But the thing I still don't get is what happened to the original Ozaru? Was that just a different Saiyan? And if so, why did he just disappear once Piccolo was captured? We know the previous Ozaru can't be Goku, because those events happened thousands of years ago and he's only 18 right now. Plus, that's not even touching the fact that this movie is implying that Goku was basically sent to Earth as a baby with the sole purpose of serving Piccolo 18 years later during the Blood Moon Eclipse, which is also assuming that Piccolo would even be free, since he was previously imprisoned. Like, whoever sent Goku to Earth to serve Piccolo couldn't have known Piccolo would just magically be freed before the eclipse. And that still doesn't explain where the previous Ozaru went, or how Piccolo managed to escape in the first place. This movie really punishes you for thinking. So Goku transforms, and this Ozaru looks absolutely disgusting.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
Back before the movie actually came out, we also got to see set pictures where the Ozaru looked like this. Now, it's still really ugly, but it looks way better than this. Piccolo commands Goku to attack Bulma and Yamcha since they have a Dragon Ball, so he chases after them. Yamcha stays behind and lets Bulma go ahead, but he gets bodied soon after. Meanwhile, Roshi attempts to perform the Mafuba on Piccolo to trap him once again, but Piccolo uses an energy blast to put a stop to that. Roshi did try to use the Mafuba on Piccolo in the manga, but instead of Piccolo stopping it, Roshi just messed it up himself. Bulma shows up next to Roshi, with Goku close behind. Roshi tells Goku that he can only defeat Ozaru from the inside, while Goku chokes the life out of him. Hearing that somehow allows Goku to just turn back to normal.
Impossible.
First rule is, there are no rules.
God damn it, it came back! Piccolo starts launching energy balls at Goku and he fires some back. Honestly, this whole sequence is shot and edited so poorly, I don't even know what's happening anymore. Meanwhile, Bulma fights Mai inside a cave and runs out of ammo, so she tricks Mai by throwing a capsule vehicle at her. The two of them then duke it out, and as she's about to kill Bulma, Yamcha comes in and just murders her. I guess he's not afraid of women in this adaptation. Piccolo and Goku start having a slap fight midair. It's really dumb. Goku then accepts the fact that he's both himself and Ozaru, which somehow allows him to like use his inner Ozaru power or something? I'm so lost at this point. Goku and Piccolo then start charging up, and Goku all of a sudden pulls out an actual Kamehameha from the manga and just obliterates Piccolo in a single hit. Yay! The group then decides to use the Dragon Balls to bring Master Roshi back to life. So they summon Shenron, who is also gold in this movie, mind you, and they wish Roshi back to life. You know, Goku, you probably could have wished your grandpa back to life too, but I guess you were just too dumb to think of that, huh? Anyway, Roshi comes back to life, and they all decide to go get the Dragon Balls again. But first, Goku needs to go get some of that action from Chi-Chi, like an absolute Chad. The two of them then decide to have a fight to see which one of them is actually stronger. And we finally end with more awful slow motion. We're finally done with this piece of trash they call a film. Wait, no. No! They actually had the audacity to give us a mid-credit scene? Come on! Anyway, this shows us Piccolo is actually still alive. Boo! So to answer my question from earlier, yeah, that fucking sucked. Like, that straight up sucked eggs. Really hard. Before I give my overall score for this one, I quickly wanted to take a look at what went wrong with this film. To answer my own question, everything went wrong. Everything. But the start of the problem can be traced back to Ben Ramsey, whom was responsible for writing the script. Now this poor guy already has to live with the fact that he wrote this abomination, and has since received every threat in the book from fans across the world. Because of this, Ben himself has come out to publicly apologize for how bad this movie was, going as far to admit that he himself was never a fan of Dragon Ball, and instead he was just writing it for a paycheck. To be honest, I can understand exactly why he would do that, because there's a couple people in the anime community that do the exact same thing. However, Ben also said that he since learned that if you're going to adapt something, you need to be passionate about whatever it is. Otherwise, it's going to end up being garbage. And he's exactly right. For that reason, Ben himself takes full responsibility for this disaster of a film. That being said though, the script wasn't the only thing wrong with this movie. The director, James Wong, wasn't a fan of Dragon Ball from the start. However, he at least decided to read the manga after already accepting the directing role. James also apparently helped co-write the final draft of the script, but decided to remain uncredited for it. Needless to say, his inexperience with the series also contributed to this disaster, and James has not taken another directing role ever since. But it still goes further than that. The plot. Everything about the plot is wrong. Everything. The setting is wrong, the ages of the characters are wrong, the way things work is wrong, everything. But you already know that from the comparisons portion, so let's move on. The actors. As far as the actors go, I don't think their performances are necessarily what brought this movie down, as all of them are fully capable of being talented actors when they need to, but some of these performances were just not good and didn't feel like the characters they were supposed to be. Justin as Goku, plain and simple, doesn't work. I don't know if it's because he was given bad directing or he just didn't know how to be Goku, but making poop faces and being an edgy teenager is not what Goku is about. Chow Yun-fat as Master Roshi also did not work, nor did it ever feel like Master Roshi the entire time. First of all, he wasn't bald, he didn't have facial hair, nor did he wear glasses, so you already failed at the appearance. But other than trying to make a nod at his perverted nature with that magazine, they didn't do very much to develop him as the character all of us remember, instead opting to make him your stereotypical wise man character. A little fun fact would be that Chow wore contacts in this film, because in the second film, he was supposed to be bald and wear glasses like the actual Master Roshi. So another lost opportunity with the sequel, I guess. Emi Rasema's Bulma was fine to me personally. It actually felt like she was trying, and from interviews you can clearly tell she cared enough to try to get the character right. The only problem would be that Bulma feels a little too serious in this movie, but otherwise she was fine. Jamie Chung as Chi-Chi is a disaster. I think this rendition of Chi-Chi suffers most from the writing, but she is basically a different character in every way from the manga. She's rich and popular, she's also a fighter, she gets a hard-on for Goku after like 5 minutes, it's all just love interest bullshit. June Park as Yamcha is probably worst of all though. They took one of the best characters in the original Dragon Ball and made him into a surfer bro, and it's fucking awful. Apparently when it came to casting, Park auditioned as a joke, but apparently James Wong took one look at him and was like, alright buddy, you're Yamcha. What the fuck? Again, I don't know if Park himself or the script is the one to blame for making him a surfer bro, but goddamn. Finally, we have James Marsters as Piccolo, and this is honestly the only redeeming factor of this movie for me, because Marsters actually gave a shit. First off, he was actually ecstatic to take on the role of Piccolo because he was actually already fully familiar with Dragon Ball, because he had been watching it for years with his son. And to him, Piccolo has always been a very deep and Shakespearean character. So needless to say, he was ecstatic to tell Piccolo's entire story throughout the 3 movies he signed on to do. The only problem was Piccolo was given absolutely nothing to do in this movie. He just sits up in his airship looking down at everybody, he crushes one house, he makes blood minions, and then he eventually fights Goku for like 1 minute. That's it! At no point was Piccolo ever developed in any way, nor was he given anything to do. Marsters clearly could have crushed the role of Piccolo, but without anything to do, he just ends up being another forgettable bad guy. I mean, just listen to Marsters explain his take on Piccolo right here.
You know, Piccolo was working with a group called the Mystics, developing the story of human beings on Earth, really helping them grow through the million years that they're on Earth. And he came into disagreement with his bosses, and from his boss's perspective, he tried to destroy Earth, and yes, you can look at it that way, but he really was trying to do something very good, but just in a very violent way. And instead of talking to him about it and correcting him, they just lock him in jail for 2,000 years. So that made me mad. I think of Piccolo as like any other criminal who goes into prison when he's young and virile and manly. He gets locked in prison, he breaks out of prison, and he finally finds a mirror to look into after he gets out of prison, and he finds that he's old and decrepit. And at that point, I want to go get those Dragon Balls and get my youth back, get my power back. And once I have my power, God help the Mystics, God help the town. I'm going to destroy everybody that took my youth. So it's all about vengeance.
That sounds way more interesting than anything we were ever shown in the entire film. At what point did we ever get any hint of what Piccolo was actually like in the past, or what he stood for? Not once did it ever mention he was actually a good guy at one point. And you're telling me that opening sequence was supposed to explain all of that? Well, it didn't. And Piccolo was never given the chance to show that side of himself during the entire film. If the actor playing the character can tell me more about the character in an interview than he can show us in the actual movie, something is terribly wrong here. The producers of this film also apparently wanted Piccolo to look young and beautiful from the beginning, but Marsters knew that King Piccolo was actually supposed to look old and scary because he was in prison for so long. So Marsters put his own neck on the line and went behind the producer's back with the makeup department to get it right. And while Piccolo's final result does look a little goofy at the same time, I respect the fact that Marsters was doing his best to do this right. Marsters has also stated that Piccolo doesn't even really get his chance to shine until the second film, where we get a look at exactly why he's so angry, which would eventually tell the entire story of Piccolo that's shown in the manga. Which brings me to the next big problem, the sequel bait. Clearly everyone was banking hard on this film being successful so they could actually tell a good Dragon Ball story in the sequels. But if you don't start off with a coherent and good story, nobody is ever going to care if there's a sequel, which is exactly what happened with this film. If you're saving everything good for the second one, why even make the first one? Just start out with the good stuff from the beginning. I just can't believe the absolute audacity they had to sequel bait this pile of trash with a mid-credit scene. It's just such a shame this movie had to be so bad, because if it was good, we probably would have been given a good sequel to work with, at least theoretically. But instead we're stuck with one of the worst, most boring and inconsistent movies of all time, and probably the worst manga adaptation that will ever see the light of day. And frankly, I credit this film as the reason live-action manga adaptations get such a bad rap, just like the Super Mario Bros. Movie ruined video game adaptations. And because of that, a lot of people don't realize that there are actually good manga adaptations out there, and my goal for this series is to show you that. But to do that, we're also going to have to look at the bad ones too, so you also know which ones to avoid at all costs. All of the actors hate this film, the writer and the director hate this film, everyone who's ever seen this film hates this film. And if all that wasn't enough, Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, was initially very supportive of this movie. However, after seeing how bad this film actually was, and how much it disgraced the Dragon Ball name, it left such a bad taste in his mouth that he had to dig Dragon Ball out of its grave for revenge. And he created the 2 Dragon Ball movies that would later start Dragon Ball Super. So if there's one highlight for Dragon Ball fans after all this, we wouldn't have Dragon Ball Super if it wasn't for this absolute travesty of a film. So hopefully it was worth it for you. But now that I've got that long rant out of the way, what is my rating for this film? So while editing this video, and essentially having to watch the movie a 3rd time, I realized a bunch of things I forgot to mention in my original script. So if all that wasn't enough, here's even more of the bullshit throughout this movie.
Are you serious? This is torture. You're torturing me and everyone else watching. Wait.
For adapting the characters, I'm giving this film a 0.5 out of 3. I already covered my gripe with the characters in the previous rant, no point in repeating myself, but basically the 0.5 comes from the fact that Bulma and Piccolo were okay, every other character was an embarrassment. For adapting the story, I'm giving this film a 0 out of 3. A lot of the original plot elements were there, sort of, but nothing made any sense. They took so many concepts from Dragon Ball and just hoped mashing it together would make any sort of plot. At the same time, butchering countless iconic Dragon Ball elements along the way. The Kamehameha bringing people back to life? What a f***ing joke! Most of these issues come from the fact they tried to do so much in such a small window of time, mainly trying to merge 2 different sagas from the manga, while also changing up the fundamentals of the story and who these characters are. You turn Goku into a high school student, force him to meet up with the other characters, and then you still expect a big bad guy from much later in the story to all make sense together. There just wasn't enough time to make this work. Plus, you also cut out a lot of important characters from the early parts of the manga. I guess I understand why Puar and Oolong weren't there. But where the hell is Krillin? In the other 2 movies, it makes sense Krillin wasn't present, because they were adapting material where Krillin wasn't introduced. But with Evolution, they decide to adapt the King Piccolo saga, where Krillin is already present. Same with Tien, Chaozu, you name it. I guess to be fair, Krillin was killed by Tambourine the same chapter King Piccolo was introduced, but it just wasn't right to leave my man Krillin out of the fray. Regardless though, they ruined the plot trying to adapt it. We've been through this already. 0 out of 3. It was awful. And finally, when it comes to the overall quality of this film, as both an adaptation and a standalone film, I'm giving this film a 0 out of 4. It's like beating a dead horse, burying it, digging it back up, and beating it again. But this movie sucks in every way possible. It's an awful film by itself, but as an adaptation, it's even worse. This could very well be the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. They had millions of dollars to make a good film. And the 2 amateur films based on the same material are leagues better than this. And I imagine they had significantly less money to work with. This quote from the Screen Junkies pretty much sums it up. The greatest American insult to Japanese culture since the 1945 atomic bombs. So with that, Dragon Ball Evolution gets an overall score of 0.5 out of 10. As far as the 3 adaptations go, Evolution was easily the worst. And surprisingly, the other 2 weren't actually that bad. I mean, they were pretty bad, but in a way that they're so bad they're actually great. If you're looking for a fun, early Dragon Ball experience in live action, I personally recommend The Magic Begins. It's completely ridiculous, but if you like Dragon Ball and you like B-movies, you'll have a great time. Sawara Son Goku, Agiora Son Goku is still worth the watch if you just want to turn your brain off and have fun. Although, at the end of the day, I'd only recommend both of these films if you're a fan of Dragon Ball. Otherwise, it might not have the same effect. Regardless though, thank you all so much for watching this video today. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more videos like this one, and let me know what other manga adaptations you'd like me to take a look at next. Wow, that was a long one, and boy, am I happy to be done. But more than anything, I'm happy that I don't have to look at this pile of shit ever again. Wait a second. I know what must be done.
I let the years go by so quickly. I don't know if I feel okay with how I left. I know that I fucked it up and made you cry. Now I got this soul inside that burns at night. I thought I was healing after all these years. Turns out I was lying through my fucking teeth. I thought I was doing good, I shed no tears. I just made a blanket that I hide beneath. I take all of the good shit and then throw it away. I'm so used to this feeling of mental disarray. Drown myself in a bottle just to forget your face. But when I close my eyes, I swear I still feel your gaze. I'm so close but still so far. I wish I could stop thinking about how you are. I'm on the verge of delusion, but I don't have a solution. So I'll just keep making music until my fingers stop moving. I let the years go by so quickly. I don't know if I feel okay with how I left. I know that I fucked it up and made you cry. Now I got this soul inside that burns at night. I thought I was healing after all these years. Turns out I was lying through my fucking teeth. I thought I was doing good, I shed no tears. I just made a blanket that I hide beneath. Girl.
Rise, eternal dragon, and hear the wish of he who summons you.
I am the eternal dragon, Shenron. Speak your wish, and I shall grant it, whatever it may be.
Alright, listen here, Shenron. Are you familiar with this?
Unfortunately.
So you know how disgraceful this trash is to every Dragon Ball fan out there.
Unfortunately. But quit wasting my time. Speak your wish already.
I know, I'm gonna. This movie is one of the worst pieces of media on the entire planet, and has forever tainted the Dragon Ball name. We Dragon Ball fans have suffered enough. First this, and then the disappointment Super ended up being? We can't catch a break! So here it is. I wish for a Dragon Ball live action that's actually good. So good, in fact, that everyone in the entire world forgets that this piece of shit ever existed. Are you gonna say anything? What's wrong?
I'm sorry, Chief, but that's not fucking possible.
I let the years go by so quickly. I don't know if I feel okay with how I left. I know that I fucked it up and made you cry.